Hello, everyone.
I'm probably gonna die to Aegwin spell damage at some point. They
Well,
finally found Aegwin,
That's all right.
was she under the couch the whole time?
I guess. I don't have any natural transform effects, which means I would have to find like a Jara. Hmm.
Or like a canna? Sorry. No, I'm not, but yeah.
You're not.
I'm not.
Okay, while she's doing that, what is the last cross-platform launch that ran well on day one?
The last cross-platform launch that ran well on day one. Elden Ring?
Elden Ring was kind of bad on PC, but that is the
Oh, that's it
closest I
was
have.
it was bad. Yeah. Um. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Because like a lot of them just like come out on like PlayStation or Xbox first. I guess it was probably some sort of a Game Pass game, right?
Probably.
Because like that's Microsoft's thing. I mean, Forza Horizon 5 would probably be. I mean, that was certainly fine. I'm trying to think of like what. Oh, you know what? Hi-Fi Rush probably.
Hi-Fi Rush was, yeah, that was a good one. Hi-Fi Rush was
It
solid.
wasn't really high profile. It was just kind of like there all of a sudden.
Trying to
It certainly
remember
wasn't
even
Halo. It
2022
wasn't.
AAA games.
Yeah, it wasn't Halo Infinite. That's for sure.
Yeah, has to qualify as AAA.
19 best AAA games of.
It was certainly
Um,
not Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. That still does not run well.
God of War, Horizon. Yeah, like none of these games were really multi-platform other than Elden Ring. Monster Hunter Rise? No, I mean I guess, but nobody cared.
Xenoblade was also single platform, right?
Yeah, Xenoblade's Switch exclusive. Modern Warfare 2 was that I don't even know.
I seriously doubt that ran well, but I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Gosh, I have no idea. Elden Ring is like the closest.
2022 games, everything that launched on. Okay, so God of War. That's original God of War.
Yeah, that's
Dying
God of
Light
War 2018.
2. Okay, Elden Ring. I'm just going through seeing like Overwatch 2 for sure was not it.
Deathloop?
Midnight Suns was okay, but that wasn't really a major
If you
thing.
bypass the launcher, which you can't do in Epic Game Store, by the way.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I found
When
out
was
because I
Death
accidentally bought it on Epic Game Store. Deathloop, I think. I think it's Deathloop.
Deathloop was 2021.
I know. I think
Yeah.
that is the last AAA game to release on multiple platforms without day one bugs.
Yeah, it might be.
2 years. Okay. Like Elden Ring might be the closest.
25 best games of 2021.
Hello, everyone. We're waiting for Edelweiss to finish her prisoner mage game. It's
Question:
Well,
it's
then
a
it would
prisoner.
Who's
yeah.
the prisoner?
Well, then I guess it would
It's
have been Forza Horizon 5 then, right? Because
you're
that would have been
trying to get out
after.
of the game with your solid alibi, but at least one of you is the prisoner.
Yeah. Oh, what about maybe Resident Evil Village? That might have been okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it might have been Deathloop. Either Deathloop or Forza Horizon 5. Yeah. That's sad.
Vampire Survivors.
It didn't
Vampire
come out on
Survivors.
console.
It's
Not at the
I
same time.
No, but it came out on mobile fine and like it runs and
Yeah.
the DLC is like $2 and also you don't need to buy it and the full game is free.
Yeah.
I don't know. Vampire Survivors is the
I've,
answer to a lot of questions.
I've gotten addicted to like multiple games in that Survivors like bundle since I bought it.
Anything besides Soulstone Survivors? I tried out. It's pretty good.
Soulstone.
I think I finally
Check
drove
that.
my opponent insane because
Oh, good.
they played more minions than they should have.
How dare they
Uh,
want to use their cards?
Yeah.
Well, see, it's not maximizing infuse. They only ever need 3 minions in play.
Yeah. Well, I've got 19 hours into Bounty of One,
Wow.
and like another.
Goku, I am waiting for the balance patch for Wild Frost. I tried that on the plane and I got my butt kicked over and over again. That game is hard. Like I've played deck building roguelikes. I think you all know I've played deck building roguelikes. I think you're all
Have
familiar.
you? Really?
Yes.
You sure?
Wild Frost, I cannot beat the second act yet. Like I haven't played enough to get through that, and
Okay,
so
then
maybe I
don't
need to put
try
in a
that
lot.
then.
It's really hard. Like it's fun. It's a well-made game. The balancing is not there yet.
Oh,
Super
have you
duper
tried
overtuned.
have you tried the Spire-like mode in Aces and Adventures yet?
Yes, I like it. It's
That's
fun.
very good. It's very good. I was watching Dexter playing it last weekend.
That's the closest I've gotten to finding like the right balance of difficulty in that game, where it's
Yeah.
otherwise either too easy, too hard. That game has an
Yeah.
84 in Metacritic. Like it's actually picking up some steam. It's a fun
Yeah,
game.
it's a good
I
game.
like it.
Yeah.
Is Ramath Ramath cast snapshot and you get nothing? Is that intended?
That sounds wrong.
It's complicated. I'll explain on the show once you're done with your game. I don't know if it's intended. I can explain it, but I don't know if it's intended.
Wait, Edel finding an unintended interaction? Hold on, let me go get my surprise dice.
I am also going to call that an edge case. I don't know if it's unintended. I don't know what the intention is. I don't know how many people are raw-mathing snapshots. I think it's probably for the best if that had some kind of upper limit.
Just wanted more arcane artificers.
I mean, you can't always get what you want. but
Nick is in
sometimes you
chat
get what
doing
you
us a
need.
solid so we can start the show on time. He turned off your snapshot. Donkey, Rawmath casts and recast snapshot. It gives you nothing. The reason it works that way is because Rawmath recasts base versions of cards, and the snapshot only puts cards in your hand based on an enchantment that is created. So, like, if you Finley a snapshot back, snapshot does nothing because it has an enchantment on it. Then it does a backwards transition and drops it. So Rawmath recasts base versions of cards, and the base version of snapshot doesn't do anything because it doesn't bring the enchantment with it. But
My head
Rewind
hurts.
gets you an exact copy, so Rewind does work with snapshots.
Why do I feel like I'm in the middle of a Progressive commercial all of a sudden?
I forget what their tagline is, but
Well,
can
they
pitch
have a
that.
thing. They have a thing that they're selling called Snapshot, which is why.
ah.
Yeah. You could save money with Snapshot. I guess you're not saving money with that particular Snapshot.
It's high value.
I guess maybe your opponent would have liked some life insurance before this game, but
Mm.
you know.
They certainly did not bargain for this.
They're getting their money's worth out of the game, that's all.
This person is going to immediately go to Reddit and be like, Solid Alibi is a stupid card. Mage gets too many copies of Solid Alibi.
Are they wrong?
They're not, yeah.
Are
It's
you
not
refuting that sentence?
No.
It's a fair comment. That would probably be like the most accurate Reddit post ever.
Hearth Tech video. Donkey, do you have a link to that you can send me on Discord? And I have one more show. This is not my last one. I got one more.
Better not be. You throw off all of our plans if it is.
Okay.
You can have it in 2 hours, Diego, when she's done playing this game. I'm allowed to make these jokes, by the way, because I have been guilty of the same thing multiple times.
If the snapshot is... Let's see.
Oh, unlucky them. The Aegwin buff went on to an arc splitter.
Hmm.
They needed it to die. Well, we got there. after 30 minutes.
Congratulations.
Did we win? Well, we had a victory, but did we win? I guess is really
Oh
the thing
yeah,
that we did.
it was glorious. We ran them out of cards. Feels like the old fatigue mage days.
Oh my god.
Oh.
You're making it have physical reactions to your Hearthstone
A
game.
sneeze, just a sneeze, unrelated.
Hang on.
It's an
I have to-
independent
I mean,
sneeze.
you are
Before we start.
allergic. You are allergic to control, so that does.
Devs say this will be fixed soon. So I see the video. I'm wondering where the link is for the source on that. But I do see the video. Thank you, Donkey. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell people that we're live.
Yeah. Oh, I should open up an Audacity. That's a good idea. No, we are not installing an update right now.
Nope.
Nope, that is not a thing that we're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I skimmed through the patch notes. It's just like, or the show notes. It's just patch notes, show notes. I don't
Yeah,
even know
that's
if we
basically
need
it.
explanations because we're gonna go through these patch notes ad nauseum.
It's probably going to take us most of the show to do that, yeah. And I mean, we're probably going to end up talking about the meta fairly extensively as a result of that, so.
If we want to call what we have a meta.
It's a collection of decks.
Thanks, Fade to Black. Was it in this patch? I think it is in this patch. Or at least I think it is in these patch notes. I have it open here somewhere. Yeah, Arcanite Ripper and Screaming Banshee are both listed here at the bottom of bug fixes and game improvements. If you look here in the very bottom, I don't know the specifics of how it works, but this was updated yesterday. My understanding is that the way it used to work was it would give you the net health change. So, like, if you took 2 and gained 3 or whatever, then you would make a 1-1, because 3 minus 2. But I don't know exactly. Blood Boil is not... Oh, Blood Boil. You two were talking about Blood Boil. Blood Boil I don't believe was mentioned. Now it makes a bunch of 2/2s for Blood Boil. Oh, so that's substantially different. Okay.
That's very
well,
different.
I'm going to add that in the notes then. Thank you for the heads up. I did not realize. So that was not called out. And
No,
it
wasn't,
is different.
I would have remembered seeing that.
I would not be surprised if that change is a domino of the other change. But thank you for mentioning that. I did not know that was doing that thing.
I don't know if that's better or not, honestly.
It's certainly better for Ripper. It is 100% better for the weapon.
It's better for Ripper. I don't know if it's better for Screaming Banshee.
I would
Screaming
guess
Banshee Blood Boil, because it used to give you one big one, right?
I would guess that it's usually worse, but not always worse.
Yeah.
Oh, now it's
Now
Ripper
it's-
upgrades for Blood Boil.
Now once you pop, you can't stop. Yeah.
So it makes 2/2s with Banshee, but it upgrades your Ripper every time. Clearly a strict improvement for Ripper. But
Yeah.
for
I
Banshee,
think-
it's harder to say.
I think it's more. It is overall better for the class for it to be better for Ripper because
Yes.
it happens much more often.
Correct. I'm going to... are we ready to do the show? Ready?
I
Yes.
guess. Yeah.
Yep. Let me.
I'm
can
recording. I'm going to
start
test to make sure my recording's okay.
I am recording.
I am opening Audacity.
I mean, you were otherwise occupied for a little while. It's fine.
Oh man! All right. Well, we're going to.
If you were
pray-
busy sending a message, that's an honorable
Yeah.
pursuit.
We're gonna pray that this cord is fine and not let Weiss on my lap. Okay, recording.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Starting the show in 5, 4, 3, 2.
I grant you permission to speak. Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you. Never lose hope.
Hear Fred shout.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, friend.
Hello and welcome to episode 393 of Coin Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Friday, April 28th in the evening.
From Gadgeton, New York, we have me, Ridiculous Hat. From Nomogon, Ohio, we have Edelweiss. Hello. And from Northern Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good. Hi.
And from where you are, listener, we have you. Thank you so much for being here and tuning in. Y'all like that? You like that bit? I had to.
I feel violated.
Is this what you know what Britney feels like when like Fountains of Wayne did a cover of Baby One More Time? Like, is that what
I've
she,
never been Britney Spears. I'm not sure.
I mean, I would assume that you had at one point or another, but I guess that's not a fair assumption to make.
So anyways, listeners, in case you're not following Deck Tech on Twitter, 1, what are you doing? Unless it's avoidance of Twitter, in which case I support that. And 2, he karaoke's along to Coin Concedes, so I wanted him to hear that and start his karaoke and realize the call was coming from inside the house. But hey, why don't we start over and give the listeners what they want? From Gadgeton, New York, it's me, Ridiculous Hat. From Nomergon, Ohio, we have Edelweiss.
Hello.
Don't worry, I'll send you the clip. And from Northern Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
And listener, from where you are, we have you. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone that leaves reviews, thank you so much. All of our patrons, you're wonderful and amazing. And I'm going to coin concede to Deck Tech later, but Deck Tech, thank you for the honor of your hello impressions. All right, Life and Ladder. Edelweiss, you made us wait, so you get to go first.
Yeah, I've been having a good time messing around with decks since the patch of, varying quality. Mage remains my favorite class, so I've given it a lot of attention. But the best deck I made is actually just Imp Warlock with Crescendos. With the Fatigue cards. They're insane now. Like 2 mana Crescendo and 4 mana of the whatever that other Imp Summoner's name is. Are
Conductor.
ridiculous.
Gray's Conductor.
Conductor.
Card's nuts.
Yeah, they're both incredible. We already know the power of that draw package. The thing that gives Death Rattle of summon Imp Murlocs is really good for making sticky boards. I think I went like 10 or 11 and 2 with that deck. And I added like Symphony as top end. So it's like the curve toppers are Rafam and Symphony. So you can like Symphony to draw Rafam. 2 of the options give you basically a fireball's worth of damage. Just as kind of a nice finisher. And if I believe I also included the draw 3, discard 1 spell. So like it has a ton of draw.
Oh, Scorch Supplies.
Yeah, so even if you're not tapping aggressively, like you can refill. And it has the demon that makes you immune. So in rare cases where you're up against a control deck and you're just pressuring them every turn, they're running you out of stuff, then in Fatigue, you just go thing that makes you immune and draw through Fatigue a whole bunch, and then you play your Crescendos. And it's a lot of damage. So.
I bet.
Yep.
Well,
Good
all
deck.
right. Well, I'm glad you're having a good time. And Steve, how about you?
Well, I had some adventures in parenting this week.
Oh boy.
Well, I mean, more Maureen did because she ended up being the one who was dealing with it. But so the twins are 13 going on 14 in 8th grade. And so, fun fact, when you have twins, when they're in utero, they assign them twin A and twin B. So that's usually how I refer to them online. So I'm not using their names. So twin B comes into Maureen like Friday or Saturday in tears. I have something to tell you. Promise you won't be mad. Oh boy. So turns out in either kindergarten or 1st grade, the beads that like you put like on lanyards, like the chunky like plastic beads. So she decided to put one in her ear because she thought that's how earrings worked. And she never saw it come out. And she was afraid that it was still there. So Maureen calls the nurse, that calls the pediatrician to make an appointment. And they get on the call. And so they start asking a whole bunch of questions. And eventually they say to Twin B, well, are you having any dizziness? And she says, oh, just the normal amount of dizziness. Like, what? What is the normal amount of dizziness? So now, of course, everyone's panicking at this point. And she's like, oh, you know what? Like when you spin around in a chair a lot. Like, oh, okay, that is not what we're talking about. But so they take her to the pediatrician. And they, they have like this... It's kind of like a squirt gun on steroids to like get wax out of your ears, right? So it's like, if your ear is like impacted with wax, they'll kind of irrigate it out. And so they go in and they start trying to there's some earwax there. And sure enough, there's a white bead still in her ear 6 years later. So, and they couldn't get it out. So now we're going to have to she's not bothered by it. It's just kind of been there, but it's just there. And so we're gonna have to go to an ENT to get a bead removed, and then I don't know, we're gonna make a necklace out of it and make her wear it around or something. I don't know what we're gonna do, but it was this is my family. This is what we've been dealing with this week. So yeah, that was fun. So Hearthstone was a little less painful than that. Not
the audio issue I expected to hear about in the show this week, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's it explains why, now at least when she pretends to not be able to hear us, at least she has a reason. But, so I've been playing just kind of a bunch of stuff. I've been kind of just, I tried to play some Control Priest, which was fine until Vicious Syndicate told everybody to play Druid. So then that's not been great. I played some Shadow Priest over the weekend and on Monday. Which me, Tito Santana, extremely happy. I consoled myself by at least naming the deck Basilisk for Dead, so at least I could enjoy that while I was playing it. And that kind of worked until it didn't. Like I had a couple of rounds where I went like 2,000 ranks up, then 2,000 ranks down, then 2,000 ranks up, then 2,000 ranks down, depending on what I would run into. And I played some of the Azamat Druid, which is that I don't know that the deck's good if you're running into a lot of blood, but it sure is fun to be able to Azamat and clear a whole board, or make like you get the Zoc minions up pretty large.
No Hands is still winning with it. Like he's been playing it for a while now, and he's doing well with it.
Yeah, and I think I got them up to like 632 or something like that at one point, because you can hedge maze the Underkings before you trade them off, so you can get a whole lot of armor. And then once the patch happened, I really wasn't sure what to play, and I was kind of messing around with some Control Priest, but it wasn't going great because I just didn't know what I was playing against. So I switched over to World 8's Big Demon Hunter, which is very fun. There is a card that I forgot existed. What the hell is the name of it? Like Fellscale
Evoker, the 6-mana 5/7 Naga demon that if you've played 3 spells while it's in your hand, it recruits a demon, and it can't hit the other Evoker. Raging Fellscreamer, the 4-mana 4/4 that we used to use to cheat out Priestess of Fury, that it's a Demon Hunter core card that, yes, it is still in Standard, makes the next demon you play cost 2 less, so you can Raging Fellscreamer into an Evoker. Yeah, I played this deck too. The first game I played with it, I won on turn 7. Because
Yeah.
you just get Illidari Inquisitor down, which is also still in standard, and then you all Fel breaks loose and bring him back, and then you hit your opponent, and they die now.
Well, I mean, I had a game where I won on turn 3 because I played against a priest who dirty ratted and pulled out my Inquisitor, and then they left. So, that's another way to do it. But yeah, I mean, like it's just like all these cards that like I was in Lorinda's stream and I was telling him about it, and I said basically it's 20 because he's been playing nothing but Relic DH for like the last like I don't know 6 years. I don't know how long he's been playing that deck, but it's been a long time. So I said it's basically 20 cards you've been playing with for the last like month and 10 cards you've never heard of in your life. And that's basically what it is. But it's fun. You basically you have because you have Gilag, you have Illidari Inquisitor, and you have Brutal Annihilin, which is the 9-mana 9/9 taunt rush that whenever it survives damage, it does whatever damage it took back to the enemy hero. So
Quite
can
nice for
get-
tanking Sathino, by the way. Very fun at tanking Sathino.
There was what did they play? Maybe it was Astalor or something that it just took forever because every time that it pinged the Annihilin, it was pinging them back in the face. It didn't kill them, but it was very entertaining. So I mean, the deck is it's very streaky. Like you kind of have to get the right things in the right order, and you can mulligan for it. Like you need to get a Fel Scream. You can there are lines you can get if you don't get everything to go completely perfectly, obviously, but you kind of need a Fel Screamer and an Evoker and 3 spells or 2 spells that make other spells. Like I've had games where I just got blown out because I was playing against a Totem Shaman and they didn't give me anything on turn 1 or 2 to play the new finale card.
Taste
I
of
can't remember
Chaos.
the name. Yeah, so I didn't have anything to because that gives you another spell, but they didn't give me anything to hit. So then I was just like, my whole curve was screwed up, and then I lost. And Totem Shaman doesn't like once Totem Shaman gets going, it's very hard to stop it. So, but it's a fun deck. It's worth trying if you don't know what else to do. Hitting people with big things is fun.
On Brutal Annihilin, I think the number of people that forget it's not just combat damage that it redirects to their face is quite high. I was not fully paying attention, but had it on my other screen, Dragon Rider stream, where her opponent played a corpse explosion and died because it's damage-based removal. And yeah, so it's instances of one ping, so they're always going to take however much damage as it has HP remaining. And yeah, I might be getting that story slightly wrong, but from my like listening and like out of corner of my eye, it seems like that's pretty much what happened.
So what I want to know though is did they get another corpse at the end of it?
They got one, but they couldn't use it.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
Yeah, that's entertaining. Yeah, I've been so the discourse going on over the last 24 hours is that the patch didn't change anything over the last 24 hours, which is totally an amount of time that you need to evaluate 25 card changes. But yeah, I've just been doing the normal stuff, like the Rift Blackrock Warrior, your standard Naga Mage, your typical big Demon Hunter, things that we had before the patch that are totally normal decks that everyone was playing. I'm doing a bit, by the way. Those were not around before the patch. You all figured that out. And right now, if you're playing at High Legend, you're gonna face refined, powerful strategies based on cards that haven't been nerfed yet, like High Legend always is. But this was a buff patch to try and get everyone on the same, to try and get every new class or new set of cards to see some play. And some of it is new cards, some of it is older cards like the Rifts for Warrior, but also they brought back Naga Mage. You've probably seen a lot of it on ladder. It's not that great, but people really, really, really want to play it. So now they get to. They lose anyway, but at least it feels like they have a chance. It's me. I lose anyway. That's what I've been doing. So
It's just changed to keep doing things until you die now.
Right. And you can still have some games where, it's okay, and the buff to infinitize the Maxitude has definitely been really, really helpful for that deck. I have hand space issues now, but it's still just, it's fun, but not meta-defining. The meta-defining decks are pretty similar at the high end of the ladder, and outside of top 1K, I don't really feel comfortable saying there is a meta yet. It doesn't feel like there is a meta yet. There is also, it's funny, people, like especially the High Legend Pros, have commented on how Demon Hunter has held the format back and nothing changed with the patch. The Demon Hunter deck they're talking about, it's a Sinful Brand spell DH. It was discovered Wednesday, and then the patch came out Thursday, and people are like, well, this patch didn't change anything. The meta developed, what do you want? What do you want? It's a new deck that came about yesterday. What do you want?
We complain when this doesn't happen, when new decks don't come out, and then we complain when they don't get nerfed right away. And I mean, this is something that I saw a bunch of this on Twitter today, and I posted a really long tweet thread about it. But basically, like, yeah, it didn't change. It shouldn't have. The best decks really got minor touches, and they're still going to be good. And the number of people actually like build decks and experiment is like far smaller than the number of people who are just like trying to play whatever the best deck is to climb, right? So if everybody's trying to climb and you got a few people doing experiments and they're dropping because they're still trying to figure things out, like, yeah, that's what you're going to see. And by the way, if we did see the meta getting shaken up because of this patch, I would be worried, because the times when that's happened with a buff patch were 5-mana Luna's Pocket Galaxy and 3-mana Edwin, and those things were not okay. So, like, that means that they overshot. It's going to take time, because these decks weren't close. Like, it's not like Warrior was almost there, and if the Rips were just a little bit better, it would have gotten there. Like, Warrior is not even a class before the patch. Now maybe it has a chance. I mean, Mage was in the Masters Tour, but like that was for the persistence of Pocket Train and a couple other folks who brought it to like force it into the meta as a a pocket pick. But it just hasn't been there, and it needed a lot of help. So, I mean, if we're still here in a week, yeah, then let's have a conversation. But if you're going to look at this meta after like less than 24 hours or 24 hours and change now and say, well, the patch didn't do anything, good. It shouldn't have right away, because it takes time for these things to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it changed experimentation. I see a lot of experimentation. People are trying a lot of stuff. There are definitely going to be experiments that don't work out, quite a few of them. And it's an uphill battle trying to build decks. You both know that better than I do. It's an uphill battle. And there are going to be some early outliers where people farm greed. There are going to be some early meta shifts. It's hard for me to say at this point where they should be targeting, because all things considered, the launch of this expansion was pretty decent. And this balance patch so far has been pretty decent. I've had fun playing, and there have been things people are trying. I understand Miracle Rogue is still a good deck. Yes, it is. There are good Demon Hunter cards. Druid is going to be there to combat greed, and also, like, they didn't kill the Death Knight decks. They made them worse. They did not kill them. What should we be asking for? Like, what would be a better outcome than this? Do we want Death Knight to be completely dead? Do we need Miracle Rogue to be completely dead? Like, I understand Rogue has been a Nathria deck. It'd be okay for that to get toned down, and I imagine that if it stays at this power level, it probably will. But again, only at very, very top end of ladder. Outside of top 1K, I've seen a ton of variety and people having very different experiences.
Yeah.
When people at various ranks who don't like blood, I think, will not be satisfied unless it is like completely dead. But also, people will still play it, as we saw when like it was really bad last expansion. It, as things developed, has remained not great, and like there's sort of nothing you can say to people who despise blood to say like, hey, it's actually not a good deck right now, because the feeling of when they lose to it is still just like visceral. I will say, and we'll be getting into this shortly, but the class change they made to Death Knight, I have noticed, like, very, very impactful. It like, it's subtle, but I'm picking up on moments where I'm just like, oh yeah, it's very likely that they would have discovered an extra fury here, or like particularly
The
Blood
third
getting-
Soul Stealer. The Soul Stealer is a big
yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
And Vampiric Blood as well. I think that was one that like you almost built the deck to try and find like multiples of those over the course of the game.
Yeah. Or the few times that they managed that, like they get like a Lady Death Whisper off of like a Frost Strike, right? Like those types of things that just like, okay, well now I lose because they had this in their deck. They didn't have this in their deck, but now they have it in their hand. Now they're gonna have four Frosters Furies anyway. So yeah, it's like those changes are not enough to, like, I think people are still in the mindset of like the old balance patches from around like the In the Works days, when we got one balance patch every like 2 expansions, and if it didn't like annihilate whatever the top deck was and probably the 2 behind it, then it wasn't a good balance change, right? Like, you know, I remember the days of like Wild Growth and Nourish getting nerfed, right? Like, and Innervate going to like 1 mana from 2. And like, we're not getting those types of balance patches as much. And good. We should, like, if we're that far off, then that means that there was a bigger problem, right? Like, there are smaller margins. They're making more subtle changes because they don't want to like do a Warsong Commander style nerf, right? Like, they want to make it so that the decks are still playable, but just bring them down a little bit or bring other things up a little bit. But it's, you know, people are still like, well, I'm expecting that this deck that I don't like playing against is going to die. Like, you shouldn't be expecting that pretty much ever, because they've shown with like the last like year's worth of balance changes that that's not their balance philosophy anymore. Like, unless a deck is something like Turtle Mage, where it truly is like a toxic play pattern and the deck was a mistake and should not exist, they're not
Edelweiss.
going they're not going, you know, for the jugular on those decks like they used to. And we, like, expectations need to be realigned around that.
So, HS Replay just put out on the meta tab their 26.0.4 filter. As of right now, and keep in mind, they like to archetype very narrowly, so there's Pure Paladin and Bubble Paladin, there's Hybrid Hunter and Face Hunter, there's Spell Demon Hunter and Outcast Demon Hunter right next to each other. Like, I understand that there's going to be some overlap here. But, just saying, there are currently 20 archetypes above 50% win rate in this patch in Diamond through Legend over 180,000 games, and all 11 classes are represented. All 11 have at least one deck over 50% win rate over the last day since the patch right now. If you go
Even
by
Warrior.
Legend, even Warrior, it's Enraged Warrior. I know it's not super exciting, but it's there. It was fine before, by the way. I've been saying this for like, this is the 3rd expansion now where I'm saying, by the way, Enraged was fine already. But if you filter by Legend rank, it is a smaller number of decks, smaller number of games, but the top 5 decks are 5 different classes. And again, all 11 classes have at least one entry over 50% win rate. I'm not going to say that this is going to stay this way forever. There will be refinement. Right now, some of the better decks are the one that punish greed. Like the top 5 decks at Legend are Pure Pally, Unholy DK, Undead Priest, Totem Shaman, Outcast Demon Hunter. That's called hit the Naga Mage in the face. I get that. Those are going to overperform. By the way, Naga Mage and Lightshow Mage still below 40% win rate on HSR. But that's a 10% improvement. Nice buff. That's a good buff. 10% improvement. What more can you ask for? But even though things may change, this won't be forever. There may be some stale play patterns they'll have to balance again. The good news is that they will, because they always do. Overall, in terms of what I would ask from the final design team, it would probably land somewhere pretty close to where we are now. Like, maybe a couple nudges here and there, but it's probably pretty close to what we have right now. Because we have had a lot of expansions over the past year where we were not close to this, and the first balance patch made things worse, and then we knew we had to wait a month. that's not where we are right now. So I don't know. Just, I'm having a good time. And unlike the past 2 4-set metas in both Barons and Voyage, I am still scrolling streamer deck lists on Donkey.top, great website, and finding new and exciting decks that I want to queue up and play. I remember this feeling in both those expansions. After about a week and a half, 2 weeks, I would scroll and scroll and scroll and see pages of deck lists and not be all that compelled by any of them. Whereas we literally had to wait for one of the host games to be over, Edelweiss, to start the show, which has not typically happened in 4-set metas.
I intentionally talked about the fast deck in the pre-show. We'll get into this other deck later on.
So I'm just saying that as an example of where we're at with this format, no, I do not believe it is perfect. No format ever is, but I think we're all having a pretty good time. And I think in terms of the ass we would have of Team 5, it would land pretty close to here. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, you can get frustrated with, like, the reliance on, like, Discover RNG in a 4-set meta, but that's always going to be there. That's, like, a feature of a 4-set meta at this point. Like, it's just going to be, unless and until we go away from having 4-set metas, you know, then, which, you know, I'm still going to be on my 1 in 1 out BS, and I'm just going to say it and get off of it. But, like, if we're going to have 4-set metas, this is going to be a feature of it, because the Discover pools are just going to be small, and Discover cards are just going to be more powerful, and it's going to lead to some negative play patterns. But it's also important to remember the times that you high roll as opposed to just when your opponent's high roll, and that kind of helps with, you know, mentally dealing with some of that variance.
And comparing Barons into Naga set into this
Voyage.
one as Voyage as 4-set metas, I think it's just gotten increasingly better each time, right? Barons was Enraged Warrior and Control Priest.
Rush
but most-
Warrior. We
well,
were
sure.
enraged. They were just in a hurry.
Well,
I mean,
whatever. I like that. Another ETC. Different ETC. But those were the 2 standout decks. Those are the only ones I remember.
So you forgot about Deck of Lunacy? And you forgot about all the Paladin decks?
And Alex Tenwu Alex.
Yeah, those are all cool things. So, but then going into Voyage, like, there were some packages, but I think it was still cool to, like, get a set where Mech Paladin, Mech Mage got to be sort of powerful before adding more cards made them, like, not really a thing. This is, I think, one of, if not the most aggressive 4-set metas, at least that I can remember.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of fast stuff, like having Pure Paladin and Outcast DH and the Frozen Touch Mage, like, and Shadow Priest, like, there's a lot of aggro options, which often there's just, like, not enough 1-drops to sustain them. And you know, it's because it's very easy to just have a bunch of value grindy control situations, and, like, we started a bit with that with Blood and this race to the bottom of, like, adding paparazzi and other greedy options, but then that got shut down quick. And with just, like, some tweaks, you know, even in the MT, we saw people, Levick had Hawkstrider in his deck.
In the Outcast DH, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, there were not too many Blood Decays at the event, but we saw how effective Hawkstrider was at, like, just making it hard to clear a board, and then Halveria is insane. So, yeah, I think a lot of these aggro decks, like, still have shot against something like Blood Decay, which is why we talked about that matchup last episode. If you missed it, you should definitely give that a listen, because I still think people complain way too much about Blood Decay and are playing the matchup wrong. But let it cook. There's a lot to figure out, and I expect many more decks to pop up over the weekend. I've been working on stuff. Imp Warlock isn't on this at all, and I think it's great.
Yeah, I think Ike, I think, just posted an imp
Yes,
cursed
but
warlock
Ike
today.
has
Yeah.
curses. That is incorrect.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's correct. I'm just saying that I've seen them posted today.
'Kay.
And so that could start to build up some speed. If Ike decks are not necessarily the ones that you're expecting to tear up the meta, but every once in
They
a while
do
you'll
every so
cycle.
often,
Yeah.
like once in a blue moon, and this is also the most pedestrian Ike deck I've seen in a minute.
Yeah. Did he give a code with it?
I don't think so, but I didn't
Okay.
copy this one.
All right. Well, then maybe
Yeah.
he's not that confident in it then. Okay.
Yep. And this is also, I don't want to come across as saying you should be having fun right now if you're not. That's not at all what we're saying. If there is a play pattern or whatever that y'all aren't enjoying, please feel free to take a minute, examine your own relationship with the meta, with the format, whatever's going on. Not everyone is going to enjoy every format. Just in terms of balanced targets, in terms of objective analysis, I think it's pretty hard to ask for more than what we've got. Doesn't mean you have to like where it landed. And it doesn't mean that every new card is good and every old card is gone. That's super not what happened. Just saying that, give things a try and at least wait through the weekend before we say anything negative about the patch. Like, there are tweets going on right now in front of my timeline where people are asking for emergency nerfs. Emergency nerfs. It's been 30 hours. Why?
In Standard, strategies are constantly evolving.
They sure are. Anyways, shall we evolve our way into news so we can talk about the buffs we've already been talking about? Let's do that.
Sure.
Probably nerfs first.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
They did a patch. So, yeah. Let's read this patch. It's large and impacts multiple formats, primarily Standard, but there's a bunch of dual stuff in here too. There's some BG changes, there's some bug fixes. Overall, we're pretty happy with meta diversity and power in Standard right now. There are a few outliers that we're looking to rein in with this patch, but the bigger focus on raising the power level of some of the new Festival Legends cards and archetypes so they can compete with the stronger stuff and people can feel better about trying out these fun new strategies. First change is Death Knight. All Death Knight cards with any 3-rune requirements, like Frost, 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 or Blood, Frost, and Holy, sorry, CNE, are now removed from all Discover pools and random generation effects. Random generation effects includes things like the Scourge. You cannot get a Death Whisper or a Marogar or a Mograine off the Scourge anymore. It's just not there. It has the same tag internally as quests, which you just cannot find them, generate them, discover them, anything. They're just not in any pool.
Wait,
comment-
the Scourge is double rune.
You can
No,
find
you
a
can't-
Scourge. You can't Scourge into the 3-rune minions.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And
Yes,
this
but-
is all Discover pool, so it's not just Death Knight, it's also Rogue, which is where you're also going to find a lot of these cards. So
Also, Paladin.
yeah, I've gotten Marrowguard from a Countess. It was not a pleasant experience to be on the other
I've gotten double Mograined, so
side. That sounds bad too.
And so you also you can't evolve into a Death Whisper, into a Mograine, into a Marogar, and they're not things you will see except for the copies you put in your deck. The text here, the dev comment, Death Knight is very strong as a class right now, and this change weakens the class across the board. We've also received a lot of feedback that one of the more frustrating parts of playing against Death Knights is when they're able to generate additional copies of their powerful triple rune cards, particularly when the card is one the deck didn't have access to in deck building. Edel, you have been playing a lot of things that discover other things, and I know you play a lot of Death Knight, especially value Death Knight decks. Talk us through how this has felt.
I wouldn't say especially value Death Knight decks. I play a lot of kill you Death Knight decks, but
Rainbow DK is a lot of value. I know that
Yeah,
it's
but-
damage value.
there's 0 discovers in my Rainbow DK hat.
None? I thought there were
None.
some. Oh, no Viziers?
Anymore.
No
Not
Nerubian
with the new
Viziers.
cards. Nope.
You cut Vizier. Okay. We'll talk about
did.
that later. But
Why
don't
are you
well,
surprised?
yeah. It's Nerubian Vizier. It's 1 mana discover.
I mean, I could double check, but yeah, I'm pretty sure everything.
I
is
trust
still
you. It's
safe.
fine. But you
You
talked
cut
about
those for hipster. You cut those for hipsters just to send a message.
No.
Anyways, you talked about the impact of this change earlier. Expand.
Yeah. So the way that Blood DK was built, I'll use that as a prime example because I think it has the most discovers generally. It was discover a ton of vampiric bloods. And you would do that with Noglings, you would do that with Vizier. They had the finale 5-mana Ghost Rider to also discover more. And I think when I consider what the triple rune cards are supposed to be, they're supposed to be a payoff for doing this penalty, right, of only using, a very specific 3-rune combination. And so as a payoff, it feels kind of wrong to just also sometimes get more of those. And particularly in off combinations, right? A Frost DK suddenly getting a Nogling into Vampiric Blood to win a mirror is like, what? Because it's just so off theme. And one of the things people complain a bunch against Blood is when their opponent hits like 50 to 70 life. That was not fun numbers to be looking at. And it's so hard to play around additional copies of Frostworm's Fury or Frostworm's Fury out of a not triple frost deck. So I think this is something that it's subtle because it's to discover. So like it's hard to necessarily know, oh, I would have seen this discover in this situation because, maybe you would have, maybe you wouldn't have. But just over the course of many games, I have felt it is quite noticeable, at least to me, like, hey, the way I can play this, knowing that they will only ever have 2 Vampiric Bloods, that they have to draw them, that they will only ever have 2 Frostworm's Fury unless they run Lady Death Whisper, which they haven't been. Maybe it'll make its way back into decks, but that's like now the only way to get extra copies of these, apart from Dispossessed Soul. I think that's the other way.
Yeah, you can get a copy if something says a copy from your deck or a copy from your hand. Like
right.
If you Death Whisper, you can copy Frostworm's Furies, but
right.
it
or
has
snapshot.
to be it has to be specifically something that's copying, not a Discover or Random Generation.
Right. You have to go through particular hoops, and most of the time that will not be the case. So, extra Marrow Manipulators is another big one. It was just like
extra
so
Pyroblast.
much damage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or getting Marrowgar if you're something that doesn't usually make a bunch of use of your corpses, right? Or if you're not a Death Knight. It's absurd. So, apart from basically Plagued Grain, there were times where each of these were pretty feels bad to run into in terms of being discovered. Extra copies of Mograine off of Hematurge or something.
Yeah,
that's
the killer.
special
That's the killer in a control matchup.
Yeah.
Right. When you get like triple Mograined, like that's really when you start feeling it in a control matchup. More so than like Vampiric Blood.
There are, like, Blood in particular, I feel like every matchup had one of the big 3 discovers that you wanted to find, if not multiple. Mograine for control, Soul Stealer for board, Vamp Blood for burn. And like you said, Edel, they do feel special now. They feel like big windmill cards that you slam and it matters and it makes a big impact in the game, but also you count them. The comparison I've made for these cards as to why they had to limit the discovers, why they had to find the solution, these are Highlander cards, but the restriction isn't in the text box. It's in the deck builder. So you have to remove them from discovers because if your non-Highlander opponent discovers a Dragon Queen Alexstrasza or Arena or whatever, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't function. But there's no limit to the playability of these, like the text box in these cards. And the way to add a limit to them would be to make it so that you have to have built your deck with those runes, which does not solve the problem of discovering multiple copies. You want it to be a special moment. So it's a bit weird, but there have been a lot of cards in the past that have been undiscoverable, just we don't think about them because we've internalized them, they make sense. Because usually, discovering them would be bad for us, right? They took the quests out of all the pools because discovering them would be bad for the player, and so everyone's like, oh yeah, that's cool, I don't want to do something that's bad for me. Now it's good for us, and we're like, well, this feels weird. Yeah, because you want to do it. It feels weird to not be able to do something you want to do. I don't know if I call it elegant. it's a little funky, and one of the few times where they've changed the rules to like improve the gameplay experience by taking something away that we gotten used to. The last time I can think of this was you can't discover a card with the same name, like you can't renew into renew or whatever. And
Or Dragon Queen Alexstrasza into Dragon Queen Alexstrasza.
Yeah.
That was the big one.
That was kind of the example, right, of the exception that became the rule shortly after. That's basically CNE into this much faster. It doesn't feel the most intuitive, but you'll get used to it even if you don't know the rule. But it is taking away something that we had adapted to. So a little funky. I know that they're working on some kind of tooltip to put in the client, but that won't matter unless you are looking for something to post on Reddit. It's not going to come up where you go through mousing over all the cards in your collection like, can I discover this? That's not how people are going to interact with the game.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, if you think about it, it's kind of like when they nerfed Kazakhstan to say you had to have played 4 dragons, because the way that Kazakhstan worked before was just like, if your deck started with, however, I don't even remember, if your deck started with X dragons, then replace it, then do the thing, right? And so people would just, or if there were only dragons in your deck or something, I think that if the only minions in your deck were dragons, I think so people would
the deck.
just don't play minions, right? So then or just draw your whole deck, and then it's not a problem, right? So this was that change made it more in the spirit of what the deck building restriction was supposed to be. This is the same thing, that these are supposed to be payoffs for going all in and cutting off your access to the other runes. And so when you still get access to them anyway, then it feels bad for the other person, right? And because those cards are intentionally much higher power than every other card that Death Knight gets, because there's a heavy restriction in cutting yourself off from 2/3 of the cards in the class in order to play them. So this is just kind of making it feel more like intended. And honestly, like this, it just, especially like when it feels like you didn't have to work for it to get it, right? Like when you just like, oh, of course they got the 3rd Frostworm's Fury, so now I'm dead because I only played around the 2. Like, if it's that powerful, you should know how many of them are in the deck, and you should be able to play around them. And I think there's a slippery slope here somewhere of like the rules of what is in or out for Discover are going, if we keep making exceptions, it's going to get more complicated before it gets better. But I'm okay with this particular change because I think it makes sense. But I am recognizing that there are things like, well, 2 of the signature spells can't be generated, but the other 9 can, right? So there's definitely, this is a tool that's in their toolbox, but it is going to get more and harder to keep track of as they use this tool more and more down the line.
I do think it's sort of a self-solving problem, though. Like, someone sufficiently out of the loop is never going to notice. They're just not going to be in the Discovers anymore, and that'll be weird, and
right.
Move on. And someone sufficiently high up will be, tapped into all the stuff and will get updated on when things aren't in the pool. It's kind of, I guess, the middle area where you like might know to check, but then you forget what it is. It falls out.
If you're a good enough of a player to know what you're looking for when you discover, you're probably going to be aware of the rule.
Yeah.
And also, like, if things are never in the pool, if they're removed from the beginning, that's different than if something is in the pool then pulled out of it. And it hasn't been used for balancing all that much that I can think of. Trying to think of when that was used for actual balancing outside of, like, the renew change. Because Nozdormu was pulled out of Ysera Unleashed years ago because it was a sudden Nozdormu and then people would get their turn skipped. That's not really balanced so much as, like, Nozdormu causing problems again. But otherwise, like, they banned 2 cards from this expansion from ever being in Discover pools the second they were released. And so we never got used to the idea of finding CNEs. I don't know, I feel like it's just you play the game as it is.
And these are definitely meaningful hits. The biggest ones, I think, being Frostworm's Fury and Vampiric Blood.
Yeah.
And in the case of Vampiric Blood, something that I've heard is, well, Screaming Banshee is still way too strong and needs to be nerfed. And I do feel Screaming Banshee is a very powerful card. But the removal of Vampiric Blood from Discovers means you can no longer have a discounted one on Vizier or have a discounted one on Noggling. So that play of Banshee Vampiric Blood can happen a maximum of twice and only comes down on turn 7 or like 6 with a coin. And it is a very powerful play, but it is limited now. And so I think they're just seeing how things go, because previously, like, Blood needed something like Screaming Banshee to actually have pressure and like be able to compete. And there's a lot of ways that people, I play plenty of Screaming Banshees, and people either just like, play around it by, okay, well, you're close enough to full health anyway, I'll do this, or they just have the damage removal to keep her from gaining too much life. Like, there are lots of ways people end up dealing with them. Maybe it'll be determined at some point that 6 health is too high, but I totally get wanting to sort of let this big change like play out and see how it impacts before doing more specific card changes to Death Knight.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing that we should address, if you, dear listener, are thinking, well, why didn't they just change it so that you can only discover within the runes that your deck started with?
Oh, no.
And yeah,
no.
So 2 problems with that. One is that Blood would still get more Vampiric Bloods, Frost would still get more Phosphorus Furies. But by the way, they would do that a lot more often, because you would be shrinking the Discover pools down so much
to like 9 cards.
Yeah, you would basically be able to just pick the card that you wanted whenever you discovered. So just limiting to the runes that your deck started in is not a sustainable solution. And I think even if they'd done that, still being able to get the triple rune cards in the decks that would have started with them is still would have been fine for them and would have not really made the impact that this would have.
That is something that I thought was maybe an end game goal, but could not be implemented until like the class had as many cards as everyone else, right? Because it's operating on a sort of 1.5 or like 1 set deficit because it got Path of Arthas. It's operating on fewer cards than other classes, so Discovers are particularly potent.
I think it has the same amount now.
Oh, does it?
Well, it has the 15 extra in core, and then Path of Arthas was to make up for the 26 cards that the other classes got in Voyage and Nathria. So it should actually have 15 more cards. So removing 10 cards from the Discover...
But never mind. It would never have been okay.
Yeah. It's like, the pool would obviously get diluted, but yeah, you just end up with more of the thing that you don't want. They have 3 different issues they have to solve. They have to solve the issue of breaking rune restrictions, which I think is the smallest issue. They have to fix the issue of triple rune cards being huge payoffs that are played more than twice a game. And they have to fix the issue of other classes getting these huge triple rune payoffs without any of the work. Again, it's kind of like a Highlander card, except the restriction is always active if you get the card in your hand. So the only solution to that is take the card out of your hand, unless you want to make these cards not function based on some kind of text-based restriction, but it'd be really hard to find an elegant restriction that would not just make the problem worse within DK. Yeah. So, anyways.
You need like a Magic-style card text box to make that work.
I would much rather they do what they're doing now.
Yeah, agreed.
So anyways, they also nerfed some stuff. Rowdy Fan, 4 attack to 3 attack. Yeah.
Saw that coming.
Anyone that played with this card saw this coming. Overseer Frigidara, the only direct DK card nerfed. She went from 5 attack to 3 attack. And then Twig of the World Tree went from gain to refresh, as it probably should have been for a little while now. Because it was meant to be played on turn 4, popped on turn 9, and then so you play stuff before, then play stuff after. Instead, it was being used with Instrument Tech, Sphere Sapiens, and Guff to play 20 mana worth of stuff on turn 5 or whatever, which was better. Too good, in fact.
Rest in pieces, Twig of the World.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, it ruined duels for a good long while before they banned it there. So
yeah. The Frigidara change, I was uncertain when they announced this as like the card, getting changed because I wasn't sure how it was going to get hit. I thought maybe 4 or 5 or something, and that didn't seem like quite enough. I think this is one of those changes where it remains a very good card that will not go out of any Frosty K decks, and also it is not as punishing when you're unable to kill it. Because so many times this is there and you're like, well, now I also die because it has 5 attack. So reducing that down to 3, I think, is quite meaningful.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be fairly statted. It's drawing you a Frostworm's Fury and something else.
And clearing the board.
That's good enough, right? Yeah, and it's clearing the board, right? Like, it doesn't need to be able to hit you in the face on its own. Like, a Marrow Manipulator is kind of getting soft hit by the other change. So, like, that, and that's like an offensive card that ought to probably still be a 5/5. That's fine. This one, like, it was just adding insult to injury when you got hit for 2 in the face, and then all of a sudden there's a 5/6 that you need to deal with. So, yeah.
It's playing against Frosty K, like, and make no mistake, Frosty K, still good. It's still very good. But now instead of Frigidara into Frostworm's Fury into Routing Fan, like, murdering you, it just, like, it might only maim you. That's not a great sales pitch for the nerf, but it did get a little worse. Anyways, they also buffed a lot of cards, and starting with 7 warrior cards. Okay, so I'm going to run through all these warrior cards together, and then we'll talk about warrior for a little bit, just for a little bit. Rockmaster Voon, the guy that copies a minion of each type in your hand. He's 3 now instead of 4. Verse Riff and Bridge Riff. The Claw Riff is now costed like a claw. It costs 1 instead of 2. And the Bridge Riff, the one that makes 3/4 and a 4/3, now costs 5. Power Slider. Go ahead.
Those are super relevant. I've
They
played
are.
with Rift since, and they felt good.
I did Double Claw on turn 2 and Fireball plus 6 armor. Awesome. Cool. Power Slider went from a 3-mana 1/2 to a 3-mana 2/3. That's the one that it gets bigger when it has for each other minion type you've played. By the way, I'm pretty sure this is, instead of giving itself a tag, they just gave it +1/+1 so they can dodge every rules question that everyone would have all the time until the card rotated out. Of does it count itself, because both ways feel kind of weird. So instead, they're just like, here's your +1/+1, just move along. Shield Block costs 2 now. Frightened Flunky is a 2/3, and my favorite, Thori Balori, now comes back forever. So you can copy it with Voon, and then you can get back 2 of these. You can fill your board with Phoenixes, Phoenicians, whatever. And so I'll read the dev comment. Warrior had 2 major themes this expansion, Menagerie and Rifts, and neither of them landed at the level we were hoping for at launch. We're buffing these Festival Legends cards to give those themes a chance. We're also buffing some older cards to help support the class generally. Shield Block is a card we now hope can become a definitional, powerful card that represents what Warrior is about. We'll continue to monitor the class after these adjustments to determine if further changes are needed down the line. Who's played Warrior besides me? Just me and Edel. Okay.
I played a little bit, but I did not play it in a way that I won any games, so I'll defer to the 2 of you on this. So
I beat 3 people with Tony Warrior. So.
Oh no.
Started 3-0, then went down to 3.
Okay.
This patch was terrible. Never mind. I take everything back.
Look, eventually people started playing aggressive things again. It didn't work out. But.
So I played some Riff Menagerie Warrior. I played some Enrage Warrior. There have been a bunch of things I've tried. They're all fine. I have not found a list yet where I'm like, this is a meta breaker. But I found, like, Enrage Warrior totally okay. First game I played with Enrage Warrior, I hit my Demon Hunter opponent in the face with a 17/17 soloist. The big dragon guy.
Drum soloist.
Yeah, whatever. He was big and a dragon, and then my opponent left. So, like, it was fine. I had double Anima Extractor, and they Immo Horde. Okay.
That's a choice.
They were going to die if they didn't. So, they just died
they were
later.
Gonna die if they did. I mean, that's...
Yeah, I don't think it was up to them. But either way, I made my choice. I've played some Enrage Warrior. I've seen some people posting Blackrock Warrior, and Blackrock has been a good card this whole time. will Warrior end up being a diverse class with a lot of powerful options? Probably not this patch, but it'll have a lot of experiments. Blackrock, again, is a totally fine card, good card even. The support tools might not be there, but they might. We have to explore. And Rage Warrior, it will be underplayed and totally fine the entire time, just like the last 6 months. I don't know. It's fine.
Yeah. And I guess, like, shield block at least lets you, like, curve shield block into heavy plate if you're going to be trying to gain a lot of armor early for whatever reason. It's always been kind of weird. Those are both been a 3 mana and kind of conflicting with each other, but you always also want to run both of them in the deck. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to matter right now because I don't think control is the way you want to play Warrior right now because it just doesn't have the control tools. But if we do get something that cares about armor and cares about control, I think that 2 mana shield block seems fair given the state of other similar cards in other classes.
Yeah, it just feels like an update, same as when they put Slam down to 1 and they put Execute back to 1. Like, they got outdated in terms of their mana cost, and so now they are being sort of brought into the new era. And like several other things we've seen, you know, in terms of Consecration, in terms of now Holy Nova. I think, you know, I like these changes, particularly because they're cards that everyone has.
Yeah. All right. So we also have multiple other classes in addition to those 7 buffs. Mage, Infinitize the Maxitude. Instead of discover a spell and finale return this to your hand at end of turn, now a discovered spell reduces its cost by 1. It's a little primordial glyph with buyback. Love that. Audio Splitter. It used to be 3 mana 4/3. That when it died, it copied the highest cost spell in your hand. Is now a 2 mana 3/2. Spite Lash Siren, yes, is back to 4 mana 2/5. Naga Spell, Naga Spell, Naga Spell, Naga Spell, and then Arcane Artificer went from a 1/2 to a 1/3. The Dev comment, Mage got 2 major focuses in Festival of Legends, Light Show and DJ Menistorm. Audio Splitter and Infinitize the Maxitude can both fit into those decks and others, so we hope those changes can help open up the class. As for the reversion of Spite Lash Siren, what more can we say other than Naga, Spell, Naga? It's in the patch notes. I'm reading the patch notes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's fine. It's playable. It's not, I don't think it's good. I mean, I saw Habu Gabu posted a list that he got into top 100 with, which is continuing the long tradition of Habu Gabu posting mage lists that only he can climb with. So that's fair.
Yep. Just like the old days.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just glad to see him playing Hearthstone again. But you know, I don't like, you're losing Flurry and you're losing First Flame, which were like 2 of the big things that made Naga Mage playable back before it got nerfed. And like, you have to run the oh god, now why am I blanking on it? The one mana spell that also gives you a 1/2 in your hand. Flame Geyser. Like, you have to run that. And like, then you have this stupid elemental in your hand that you don't want to play. Right? And like, a lot of the cards just get very awkward and you run into hand space issues a lot, and then you don't really have any way to, you still don't have any way to tutor the Siren. So, you know, good luck to you if you don't draw it. I guess you can amalgam into it. But it's definitely not at the point where it was around when it got, and it wasn't ever like a meta defining deck. It probably would have been when it got nerfed because everything else was taking a step back and it didn't. It was a playable deck, but it wasn't, it was a good deck, but it was like high tier 2 or maybe low tier 1 when
it was meta defining because of the popularity. Like, people really loved the play pattern, but also you would just make a huge board and then you'd be like, all right, 1 removal spell, and be like, oh, well, okay. And
now what?
And so that's still what happens now, except also we don't have Flurry, which is a huge deal. We don't have First Flame, which is fine. We can manage with that. Infinitize does okay. But we don't have Flurry, which is a really, 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 really big deal. And Frozen Touch just doesn't kill all that well. The thing that the deck is actually missing the most is the Wildfire package, because the Wildfire package was actually like a way to win the game when your board got cleared, and it scaled independently of your board, and you had the hero. It was just, it belonged. It was a natural fit. And there's nothing that really takes the place of that right now. So
Yeah.
people are trying. And again, we might land somewhere where even non-Habu Gabu players can win. So far, I've seen a bunch of experiments. My favorite thing to do is go to the Donkey Streamer Decks page, find the highest win rate Naga Mage recently, and then refresh the page every 30 minutes to see the win rate drop as more people pick it up. It happens every time.
Yeah.
There's one this morning where I opened it was at like 70%. Now it's down to 58. You're just gonna keep seeing it go.
Yeah.
Keep seeing.
I think it must have been Edel while you were streaming yesterday, and you ran into a Naga Mage, and I just said, like, I can't wait to clean the scene this because it's going to be so satisfying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, presently, without Shield Shatter, like it's basically Clean the Scene and Brawl are the 5 mana clears that handle it. So there's not a ton of stuff to deal with it at that stage of the game.
Priest House also has Harmonic Pop at 6, right? So like it's got
Right, yeah.
multiple clears that it can do, and I mean you can get you're playing right into like an Arcanist double Unleash Fel turn at that point too at 6 mana. I mean you need both of them, but it's not like that doesn't happen that often, especially with Taste of Chaos where you can get extra Unleash Fels. So, and I mean Corpse Explosion also will generally clear it by that point.
Yeah.
So.
Corpse Explosion, it can be hit or miss though.
You could also
sometimes
just or just like coin Frostworm's Fury, have fun with your next turn. Yeah.
So what else? We have Hunter, Stranglethorn Heart from 10 to 8, Halderon Brightwing. It is now Handeron Brightwing because it hits your hand and your deck, as I've been asking for a little while.
Yep.
Like Infinitize the Maxitude, Stranglethorn Heart is underperforming. We're giving them both buffs because we want these legendary spells to feel better to open and play. We're also buffing Halderon to give some help to the Arcane Hunter package that has never had a chance to shine. My question for both of you, have either of you seen one of these cards in play?
I have seen a Halderon. It's been fine.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Halderon is fun. I played some Arcane Hunter myself, and you can do some silly things where, you know, you Halderon and then you twin bow an arrow, right? To draw 6 cards or something.
Oh, the
Conjured Arrow.
Conjured Arrow, yeah.
Right. And then you try and play, you know, the other stuff that buffs all the arcane spells in your hand for spell damage. So it's like, it's kind of gimmicky. You know, obviously Druid is a nightmare because they just gain infinite armor, and so you cannot win that. But, you know, it's got a lot of damage. It's cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good change just because, like, the way it was before, you would play it and then you would have to wait. And if Hunter hates one thing, it's waiting. So, like, that at least, like, lets it go and use the things that it has now and then actually be able to do something right away instead of having to wait and draw like a whole bunch of stuff and then eventually get the payoff. It also just kind of like makes the card feel better because you'll be able to use the things in your hand and actually like feel like doing something instead of like, okay, well, this is going to do something eventually. And like most of these cards that only hit the deck, like we were talking about this with like Lorthamar Theron a few weeks ago, right? Like,
or Deck of Chaos.
Yeah, Deck of Chaos is another one. Like, it has to be like actually like borderline broken or actually broken in order to
like
make
Deck
a
of
difference.
Lunacy.
Like Deck of Lunacy or like Heliseth, right? Where where you're going to be able to do it early and then immediately, you know, feel the results and have the results be impactful. Because if you have to play the thing and then wait to draw the cards that you're buffing, like it just takes forever and your opponent's hitting you in the face in the meantime. This at least is now. You can play that and then immediately play one of the arcane spells that you've gotten in your hand, and you don't have to worry about, well, have I drawn too many to play this now, right? Like you can just hoard them in your hand if you want to.
Yeah, I think notably if you curve Halderon into the Lynxes, right, you get 2 Lynxes.
Yeah.
Great.
And you
Better
can't
than
plan
before.
that curve if they're still in their deck, if they're still in your deck, right? Because you have to top deck it. So
Right. That was my issue, was that I couldn't keep the arcane spell with the arcane booster because the payoff didn't work with the cards that I put in my deck. So at least you can do the 2-drop into the 3-drop into the 4-drop and get 3/4/4s and be like, hey, my cards work. At least there's basic functionality instead of keeping the 2-drop because it buffs your hand and then the 3-mana legendary making it so it buffs your deck. So which one do you give up? I'm just glad that tension is gone. So anyways, I don't know how much this is going to make a dent because there's a very good Hunter deck right now with an extremely low play rate. It's Face Hunter. Like the various builds of it, I think the best one right now is still the Cope of Quel'Thalas build, which I cannot believe that Hope of Quel'Thalas is in a good aggressive Hunter deck right now, and people are just like, that's boring. What? What? Whatever. But it's there if you want it. If you want to hunter people, you can hunter people. All right, Shaman. Jazz Base, going from a 2 attack weapon to a 3 attack weapon. Altered Chord, going from dealing 5 lifesteal damage to a minion to 6 lifesteal damage to a minion. Flow Rider, this is the exciting one, going from a 2-mana 3/2 to a 1-mana 2/1. Battle Cry, if you're overloaded, discover a spell from your deck. This card is loco bananas now. And then Lightning Storm, instead of Overload 2, it's Overload 1 because they buffed all of the damage spells that hit your opponent's stuff by a mana, so they reduced this by a mana too. Dev Comet, the new Overload Shaman, has not performed where we wanted or expected it to, so we're giving it help with all these changes. Change to Lightning Storm also puts it in better in line with the other current 3 to 4 cost AoE spells. That's correct. I have not yet seen a shell that really makes me want to do this yet. I want to play Flow Rider, but I haven't seen a Shaman shell that's all that great. Like, Theno's been refining and found some decks that are like 50% for him, so I would not expect most people to hit 50%. It's fun. It's interesting. It's not winning yet, and I'm not sure it will with the current tools because Shaman right now feels very Shaman-y with a bunch of powerful support cards and no actual way to close things out. Maybe that'll change in the near future, but there are a lot of good support tools. I'm just not sure there's a deck here yet. There are cards. Not sure about a deck.
I mean, the way you have to win that I've seen is stick a minion and then play Jive Insect and Criminal lineup. So, that's a plan. I mean, the thing is that none of these cards say totem on them, so they're not. I haven't really seen very many of them either. I think I saw like one Lightning Storm. It seemed fine. Lightning Storm's always been a fine card, but the Overload 2 was just like unnecessarily punishing. And the rest of them, like, I think I saw one person try to do like Jive Insect and Criminal lineup, but like that's the win con. And you're relying on a legendary spell that relies on you sticking a minion and then being able to discount everything.
I feel like it's got to be better to focus on like pack the house and then just have a Bloodlust in the deck.
I mean, that's not exciting.
It's if you're gonna Bloodlust people, just play Totem Shaman, which is one of the best decks in the game and very good at bloodlusting. Very good and very fun. And still, to this very moment, Totem Shaman is my recommendation for people saying, I'm not sure what to do and nothing is fun. Go play Totem Shaman. It will make it very clear what you're supposed to do, make some totems, and it is fun because then your opponent dies to a bunch of totems. Large ones.
And you can learn positioning.
Oh yeah, that's right. Flametongue Totem. Though also at a certain point, it's not going to matter too much.
I was trying to explain
you position the totems into your opponent's face. That's how you learn the position.
Yes, thank you, Steve. But you were trying to explain the conga line, I'm sure.
Yeah, particularly with the piranhas, right? It's very important.
Oh god, the piranhas with the anchored totem are just like disgusting.
Well, with the anchored positioning doesn't matter, but with Flametongue positioning matters.
Yeah.
It's back in our day, you had to make sure the gang boss was on the left of the dire wolf, and you didn't want the Nerubian egg to get in the way of all your little minions. You had to be really careful. Careful. So yes, that's a throwback. Oh man.
You're making Mad at Arms so sad right now because he's just looking at his zoo cards and he's doing like the Wolverine picture meme in his living room right now.
It is better
you know what the funniest thing about Zoo is? All those cards were classic neutrals.
Except for Imp Gang Boss.
Yeah.
And Implosion.
And Flame Imp, yeah.
Implosion. Anyways, it is better to have conga lined and lost than to have never conga lined at all. So, speaking of Warlock, Crescendo went from 3 mana to 2 mana. Crazed Conductor, that's the one that you take the fatigue damage and you make the 3/3s. That went from 5 mana 4/5 to 4 mana 3/4. Card's great now, you should go play it. And Siphon Soul moved from 5 to 4. Warlock is one of the weakest classes in the game right now, so we're giving it some buffs to its new fatigue package. We're also bumping up Siphon Soul, which we think should help the class a little more generally. It's time for these classic cards to be dragged into the core set, kicking and screaming, and be positioned into relevance, because cards being bad doesn't help anybody. It doesn't give you an option, it gives you a compromise, so let's give people an option instead. Make these cards better. It's not 10 years ago anymore, and I've talked to some people about this, actually. The idea of how much stronger that cards are now, but go back and play Classic. It is not balanced. It is not a balanced format. There are entire classes that you cannot really play. And more options just makes the game more interesting for more people that can play more different ways, even though I understand, yeah, cards are more powerful. People do more things because doing things is cool and not doing things sucks. And there are times when your opponent plays a high main, you're like, well, I can't deal with the 2/2s that pop out of that and the 6/5, so I guess I'm dead now, or in 2 turns, because I know how this game is going to go. People having fewer and worse options doesn't make the game better.
And with Siphon Soul specifically, right? Like, Warlock and Priest are pretty much expected to be around on the same level in terms of being able to be control classes. And, like, Priest has multiple 4 mana hard removal options in Drown and Cannibalize. And there's no reason for Warlock to get... I mean, I guess the reason that Warlock was kind of punished in their class cards is because of the hero power. But I think we're kind of past that now. Like, yeah, you have a little bit of attacks in terms of what the Warlock class cards can do because the hero power is so much better than the other classes' hero power. But I don't think it needs to be as high of attacks as it used to be. In Siphon Soul, I mean, originally we paid 6 mana for Siphon Soul.
I totally forgot about that.
Like, walking uphill in the snow both ways barefoot, right? Like, 4 mana to remove a minion does not seem particularly out of bounds for a class that's supposed to be that's supposed to be able to play as a control class. I'm not gonna say the Warlock is a control class, but it can play as a hard control class.
That used to be 6 mana, kill a rag, gain 3, or I guess 6 mana, kill an Undertaker, gain 3.
In case you were feeling nostalgic for the old days, I hope that entire sentence just shook you out of it.
I get it. Or 6 mana, kill a Dr. Boom, heal 3. That would just get eaten up by the buffs, by the boom bots right after.
Yeah.
Okay, by the way, I had an Illidari Inquisitor that I summoned on... My opponent paparazzi'd into a Dr. Boom. I had an Illidari Inquisitor. They traded both boom bots into my taunt, and they double forward my Inquisitor, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is what that felt like. In case anyone is wondering, suboptimal. It's not great. Not my favorite feeling to have my minions randomly selected and double forward to die.
And then did you immediately play All Fel Breaks Loose and kill them?
No, I lost that game.
How did... Oh, excuse me.
I will send you the replay later if you also feel like being mad, but I can assure you there's not.
I'll just queue into a Thief Rogue if I want to do that.
Yeah, I can't believe you're still seeing those. Anyways, speaking of Rogue, we got 2 Rogue buffs that are specifically cards that will never be in Miracle Rogue. So we got Record Scratcher moving from 2 attack to 3 attack. MC Blingtron moving from 3/4 to 5/5. Dev comment, Rogue has some good decks right now, especially at higher levels. We didn't want to further strengthen those existing decks, but we did want to give them some more options from their Festival of Legends set. And Blingtron was actually seeing some play in the Menagerie Rogue deck that was going around. Yeah. And this makes it a little better. Like, you just play it on curve more often now. Not amazing, but fine. Record Scratcher I have not seen, and I do not expect to see. But my understanding is that I know Donkey was working on like a weapon miracle list that played some of the newer cards, the Harmonic and Dissonant card, and I think Mic Drop. It looks interesting. I'm going to try it out later. But go ahead.
I basically was hoping when I saw these cards were on here that both of them would go down a mana rather than stats changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, nah.
I
Like,
think I did. Yeah. I think I did see one MC Blingtron, but it was from a mech mage. So, so I don't know if that quite counts.
That is terrifying with Mega Shark.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I haven't seen either of these. I mean, I tried a little bit of the Menagerie Rogue. It seemed fine, but I don't think that this changed to Blink. Like, I don't like. It makes it feel a little bit better to get a real like minion out of it, and I guess it makes it a little bit better with Ziliax specifically. If you either stick it or you play it on 10 together. But I mean, I don't know that like the body on Blingtron is not really the problem, because I don't think, I mean, it makes it feel like a little bit more of a consolation prize. But I don't
think
know that
it's
it's
a
just like
bit
not what the rogue decks that are there need to do right now for the most part.
I mean, in the case of, so I'm probably the only one here who played some of the Menagerie Rogue, but I think.
Excuse me, I'm
Oh,
right
okay, all right.
here.
I even played
Did
some.
Hat play the trendy Twitter rogue deck? I am insulted. This is brand erasure.
You never liked like Keliseth or Odd Rogue.
I didn't like Keliseth because it was Keliseth, and because it took Sap away from me for 2 years. I didn't get to play with Sap and Eviscerate for 2 years because of that little guy. But it's not, this is. I played a bunch of the Menagerie Rogue. Like, I liked it because you're just an aggro deck that doesn't run out of cards. I wish we still had Coldblood. I would play Coldblood in that deck, but we kind of do. We have Rowdy Fan. It's close enough.
You have Coldblood. You have
They
Coldblood
set
at
it
home.
to 1 and then rotated it.
I got that week
to
was
taunt you.
great. That was a great week, and if that's the cost for restoring my sweet 1 mana Coldblood, we will pay that cost. And then they printed Rowdy Fan. They're like, here you go, it's fine, and it was until they nerfed it.
Anyway, I think Blingtron being 5/5, the one situation I can see as you feel better playing it on curve, and you can still have Shadow Step in that deck, so more likely to survive, so you can potentially do it again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think Rogue really needed help, but they also seem to know that, and so they buffed the cards. They're like, whatever, play him if you want, we don't care. And Blingtron was seeing a little bit of play, and this just makes him a little bit less embarrassing. Fine. They can't really buff more. Like, they certainly cannot buff the combo stuff until they pull back both the Nathria Miracle package and/or concoctions. So
Sure.
they're going to have to pull back probably both of those to give us a Rhyme Spinner deck, if a Rhyme Spinner deck's ever going to materialize. Not sure what they're going to do, but I imagine that the next balance patch, which is probably in about 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks, that's when we'll start to see data-driven nerfs that are pulling away things that maybe are overrepresented. And that's where I expect we'll start seeing things like Sathino getting a good look and a bunch of Rogue stuff. Like, I don't know. It's like there's a lot of options for Rogue.
I do find it funny every time there are cards that like have stats for flavor reasons and then end up having to get changed, or like flavor or aesthetic reasons. Like, you know, Voon, the old Voon was a 4 mana 4/3, so this one was.
Yeah.
Blingtron, the old Blingtron was a 5 mana 3/4, so this one was. And then, you know, they just changed both of those.
Yeah.
Or there was the warrior
N'Zoth.
card that was. Well, no, I was
Voon.
thinking of. We just mentioned Voon. Just let me finish, dude.
I'm multitasking.
There was the 8 mana 5/8 that dealt 5 damage and gained you 8 armor, right?
Oh,
Because
Tidal
it
Revenant.
was a
Yeah.
5/8, right? So like that was very aesthetic, and then they ended up balancing it, so it gained you less armor.
Or how Dr. Boom Mad Genius was a 7 mana hero that gained you 7 armor,
Right.
until he was a
exactly.
9 mana hero that gained you 7 armor.
Exactly.
Design first. It's always design first. Or gameplay first. Yeah. And then we have, speaking of priests, we have one priest change. Holy Nova.
Do we
Going
though?
I mean, it is technically different. It is a technically different card. We have Holy Nova, which went from 4 mana, deal 2 to all enemies, restore 2 health to all friendlies, including face. Remember that before that, it didn't go face, And then before that, it was at 5 mana, and it did go face. Now it's down to 3 mana, does not go face. Deal 2 to all enemy minions, restore 2 to all friendly characters. Okay.
It still sucks.
It's not a bad card, just the decks you would put it in suck. The
It's-
card is
it's-
fine.
I mean, it's gonna be situational, right? I think that the problem is that there are not, like, if you think of all the boards that Blood Boil doesn't actually clear on the first go round, like, Holy Nova is actually worse against them because it just does the 2 damage once, right? And there's just not, like, you have so many other options for clearing that, like, because I put it in a control list. I'm like, let's try it, right? Like, let's give it a good old college try. I wanted an early board clear for things like Frost Decay and Unholy and whatever, and it's just like, wow, I didn't really want to play it because it just didn't do anything most of the time. And I mean, the face damage, like, whatever. Like, you're not playing this card to do 2 face damage. It was a nice bonus when it was at 4. It doesn't really matter, but it's just like the 2 damage to the board in certain metas, it'll be relevant, but right now it just doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Strikes me as more of a tech, right? For, if there's a bunch of Outcast EH, right? That in particular has early small minions. And being cheaper is more relevant if you are a Heartthrob deck.
That's
Yeah,
the
but I mean,
intention
you
here,
don't-
right?
Yeah, well, you have better, like, you don't want to Heartthrob for 2, though. You don't want a 2-drop off your Heartthrob. Like, you want I mean, you'll take it, but I mean, you could just hero power your Heartthrob for free if that's what you want to do. You
Okay.
know?
I gave the wrong minion. Crimson Clergy.
Okay, that is more relevant. Yeah, that I could see.
So, clearly the intention of hitting the mana cost here instead of pushing this to 3. Because pushing this to 3 would put it directly in line with a lot of other things in Standard, right? Like, it gets a lot closer to something like
Hellfire.
Lightning Storm, which they just made that 4 total mana to 3 to their stuff. So, instead of doing that, they made it cheaper so you can overheal more often during your turn. Because the dream here is to push overheal. But they only did this one thing, and overheal was more than one change away from being a thing. And frankly speaking, you can buff more holy cards because the best priest deck cannot run them. So I don't really see a risk to buffing other cards with holy tags, except I don't really think there are other holy tag cards to buff. I don't think there is anything.
No, they're all fine, right? Like, the rest of them are, like, Shard of the Naru's fine, Clean the Scene is fine. I don't think Harmonic Pop is holy. It might be. I don't remember if it has the holy tag on it, but
But none of these go in the
that
overheal
card
deck.
doesn't need help. Yeah,
The
like, Light Bomb
overheal
doesn't-
deck
Light
is
Bomb
where
doesn't-
they...
yeah.
The
Yeah.
overheal deck is where they need the help. And none of these removal spells and silence spells are going to make the minion deck better.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, you might run the silent spell in the minion deck to get through taunts, but whatever.
Sure.
But I mean, but they also addressed that in the dev comment, and they said basically, like, overheal's not a single set mechanic. We're going to be printing more overheal cards. Basically, be patient.
let me read
Which,
this.
fair.
I got it right here. Let me read this.
Yeah.
Right now, Priest has some powerful aggressive strategies. This adjustment is to make its other decks control and overheal more enticing. While some players were hoping for more overheal support in this patch, it's me, I'm some players.
I think
Overheal...
that was actually written directly at Tonberry Blue, because he's been the one who's been championing this on Twitter, like,
It's true.
constantly.
And Ike. Anyways, I'll finish the sentence. Overheal is an evergreen mechanic that we hope and expect to evolve over time, including through additional future card drops, instead of just adjustments to our first batch. They actually did it. They put in the patch notes, mini set copium. They put it right here in the patch notes.
It may not even be mini set, right? It may just be like next expansion, right? Because, like, again, it's not a single set keyword. So they're going to be printing more overheal stuff throughout the year. I would have been surprised. I guess I wouldn't have been surprised if there was a playable overheal deck in the first expansion, but I also wouldn't have been surprised if it wasn't going to come together until the second or third set of the year.
Yeah, I can see it. Anyways, thank you, patch notes, for being written well in advance of my dialogue, but somehow rebutting me in the middle of it. Very well done. Druid got a couple of buffs. Kiri, Chosen of Elune. Used to be 4 mana 2/2 that Battlecry gave you both Eclipses, 1 solar, 1 lunar in your hands. Now a 3 mana 2/2. And Death Blossom Womper, 5 mana 6/5. It used to be a 6 mana 7/6. Now it's a 5 mana 6/5. Battlecry, draw a Death Rattle minion and gain its Death Rattle. Of note, if you're me earlier today, it does not summon the minion, it just gives its Death Rattle. So if it draws you an Underking, you cannot Hedge Maze this and get an Underking, you Hedge Maze this and get 6 armor, and then your opponent hits you in the face. So just be aware, me from earlier today, it does not summon the minion. And also, for any future listeners that are not me, this may be relevant information for you as well. But it draws a minion, gains the Death Rattle. I know Jambray has been Jambraying, and put both Stoneborn General, which makes the 8/8 Rusher, and Masked Reveler, and all the things that he did in Rogue an expansion ago, just in Druid now, with Hedge Maze and Womper, and, like, Womper's good now. Hedge Maze into, Innervate Womper is really, really strong.
I have to try this. I haven't seen this deck, but that sounds like the kind of thing I might want to do. I do like a good Death Rattle here and there. I mean, Kiri was never good, and I don't know that this changes that. I mean, at least you're not paying as much for getting the 2 Eclipses as the 2 Eclipses cost now, but like you have to have a real reason to want 3 solar eclipses and 3 lunar eclipses in your deck in order to run Kiri. And like she was in, I'm pretty sure Kiri was in one of my dusting guides, because I can just imagine writing that paragraph of text, because that card was never in any decks in the 2 years that it was in standard. I don't think shaving 1 mana cost off of it is going to make the difference as much as like having a reason to want to put the card in your deck when you can just put the cards that you want in your deck.
Yeah, I don't expect this card to even see a ton of play at 3, unless things get really, really, really greedy. And it seems like that meta already happened, and they're just changing it, and then they're going to release more cards later. So I don't know, but might as well try. Why not? Yeah. And that's the list of standard changes. There are a bunch of BG's changes, a lot of armor things. Not going to read them out. For Buddy updates, dev comment, this is our last expected patch of this Buddy's meta. BG Season 4 is coming soon with patch 26.2. When it does, Buddies will be removed again to make room for a massive minion shakeup, but don't worry, we'll see our Buddies again one day. For now, hang tight. Season 4 details are right around the corner. Of note, if you haven't been working on your BG Season Pass, now is the time. And I had 26 banked weekly missions waiting for me, and I'm going to clear through this whole battle pass, the rest of it, in under a week, because that system is fantastic. I can just come back whenever I'm ready, and all my missions are right there. It'll take like 3-4 days of playing a bunch to get through them all.
I mean, you got time.
A little bit. Now, did either of you play with buddies at all? Either of you play with new buddies?
A bunch.
Yeah. It's way better than the first time, right?
Yes, substantially.
Yeah.
I have no further comments.
Yeah. I mean, I played a little bit, but not enough to really have an opinion. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that if I'm going to play an auto battle or I'm playing TFT over Battlegrounds, I think that's been pretty well established at this point. So
yes,
I play Battlegrounds sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep, but I'm not really tryharding enough I'm not tryharding enough to really notice one way or the other when I'm playing BGs, to be honest.
Well, I liked it more, and I wanted to play more later into the patch. So, I'm not saying that I want buddies to be around forever. I still think quests were more fun, but this is more like quests. The balance was better. It felt more interesting. It's a nice set of improvements and iterations to the system, where the original implementation, I think, it was a good effort, but was missing some stuff. Edelweiss's favorite hero is Mr. Bigglesworth. I say that because there's a cat.
Trying to keep her away from the mic.
Good luck. So there are a bunch of minion updates. 4 buddies got nudged. There are a bunch of duels updates. Perhaps the most important is the bans. You cannot play Sister Svalna, Linecracker, Clockwork Automaton, Elwyn Boar, Edwin Van Cleef, and Tamsin's Phylactery. Just banned. It's gone. There are a lot of really gross strategies with these, involving reborn Elwyn Boars for very, very fast swords. Mindlock was really great in duels. Bunch of things that did a lot of damage and did some generally gross stuff.
Yeah.
They did a lot of...
Elwyn Boar was the reason I kind of put duels away for a while, just because it just got stupid. And so I might go back. I may spend some more time with it again now that Elwyn Boar is banned, because like it was just very frustrating getting completely blown out by an Elwyn Boar deck in multiple heroes. And yeah, it's not fun to play against.
And they changed once again just a lot of cards, double-digit number of passives and actives and signature treasures and all sorts of stuff. More than I can cover here in the show, but it is a bunch of cool changes to decks that I recognize as a very, very casual duels enjoyer. I imagine the meta will feel pretty different. So, cool stuff. All right, got some bug fixes and some tech changes. So, first one, Arcanite Ripper and Screaming Banshee. The way that these worked before the patch was that it used net health change. So, Arcanite Ripper says if your health changes on your own turn. So when you Cheaty Ankle Biter yourself, deals 1 damage and then has 1 lifesteal, you would think it would change twice, because you lose 1 life, that's a change, then you gain 1 life, that's a change. Instead, it would change no times because the net change was 0. So you wouldn't get any adjustment to your Arcanite Ripper minion size. Screaming Banshee was the same way. It counted net life gained, net health restored. So, if you were to Cheaty Ankle Biter yourself, you would not get a 1-1, you would get nothing. So instead, those now calculate just the amount healed. But this is a tech change that may have had an unintended consequence, or at least an unexpected one that is not here in the notes. It used to be with Blood Boil that it would count the net health change as 1 for Arcanite Ripper, as 1 change, and it would count the net health change for the size of the minion generated by Screaming Banshee. It would calculate all the health you gain and then make 1 thing. Since the health now processes immediately every time, every Blood Boil tick off of Banshee will give you a 2/2 right away, and every Blood Boil tick will increment your Arcanite Ripper, which means before, if you played an Arcanite Ripper on 3, and then Blood Boiled on 5 and popped it on 6 or whatever, if they had 5 minions, it would make a single 2/2. It would only upgrade once. But now, if you Blood Boil and hit 5 minions, it makes a 6/6, because it hits 5 times. I don't know if this is intended. It makes sense to me that since they changed the code here to check the health immediately every time, well, that's what the cards do now. They check the health immediately every time. And so that's why Ripper upgrades, that's why Banshee gives you a bunch of 2/2s. However, this is a rather enormous buff to Blood Boil and Arcanite Ripper together. Like a significant, substantial buff. Don't know if that's intended. And with Screaming Banshee, I think it is probably maybe a slight improvement to have a bunch of 2/2s instead of a single minion. You're
Depends.
better at trading with messy boards.
It's more situation dependent, I would imagine.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't have the space. Sometimes you want large stuff instead of small stuff. It's not up to you. With Ripper, it is clearly just an enormous improvement right away, no questions asked. And that card was already seeing a lot of play, and Blood Boil was already seeing a lot of play, and both cards were always in every Blood deck. So I don't know if this is going to stay this way. It's not listed in the notes, but I also don't think it's a bug. I think it's a change, and it's consistent with how these other changes work. So be aware that's new now.
And
Otherwise,
if you were concerned about them grinding you out, well, now they just kill you. So
I don't know how reassuring that is, but thank you,
Problem
Edelweiss.
But But I imagine that this isn't a bug because, like, if you're gonna test these cards with anything, you're gonna test it with Blood Boil, right? Like, you're like that's the card you're going to test either of these interactions with because, like, that's the card that's going to make this happen the most. So I would imagine, unless we hear otherwise, that this is probably working as designed. I mean, it seems like it's a big change for Arcanite Ripper, but Blood got hit harder by the rule change than the other two rune types did. Maybe that's okay. I don't know. We'll find
Don't
out.
touch my Arcanite Rippers, please.
It's
My favorite card in DK.
the tech is consistent in functionality here. I am surprised that it wasn't mentioned because it is a somewhat substantial gameplay impacting adjustment. And yeah, Bolthar in chat has a good point here. It wasn't mentioned, so it may not be intentional, even though the changes they made to the tech here make sense that it's consistent now. So
yeah.
I'm not sure if that's going to get changed, but just something to keep in mind.
I just can't imagine of all the things you're going to test with this in QA that you're not going to test Blood Boil. Like, it just, I mean, I know that, QA, sometimes they just get, tunnel visioned and maybe they just got the Cheaty Ankle Biter example, so they tested that and saw that it worked. But, like, I would imagine if you're going to test any interaction with these cards, you're going to test Blood Boil. It just wouldn't make sense to me otherwise. But I could be wrong.
Well, it being tested doesn't mean that it was fixed or meant to not. Like, it's possible that QA found it, sent it back to Dev, and Dev says, let's see what happens.
Or they didn't send it back to Dev, right? Because, like, it was working as designed, right? Like,
Correct.
they may not they may not have even reported it, and the way it was designed may not have been taking that into account, but they may not have even reported that as a bug because, like, that's what it does now.
This
right?
is a glimpse into the organizational trauma Steve and I both have from working in large corporations for over a decade of just all the different ways that things could be miscommunicated or not communicated. Either way, it's different now. It maybe is supposed to be this way, maybe isn't. We can explain it, but we're not official sources. So just be aware when you see this. Yes, that's how it works now. And it might not keep working this way, but this is how it is.
Or as we sometimes say in software development, it's not a bug, it's a feature.
Yes, please. I like this feature. This is how I thought it worked when the cards were revealed, and how I was hoping it worked. So now it finally works this way. I don't know. I'm nervous. I feel like I have to get some games in with Ripper and Blood Boil before if they're gonna take it away. Please don't take it away.
I did my gonkin'. I did my gonk DH last week. Got that out of my system. Now you can do your ripping. I'll gonk, you rip. It'll be fine. We'll see. We'll see. I also could easily see that Dev found out about this and said, let's leave this on the table as a new balancing knob. If Blood gets hit harder than we thought by the Discover thing, maybe this will balance it out. And maybe that means that the deck will survive. Or maybe it'll be too good and they'll turn it off in server-side patch in 2 days. I don't know.
Or this is why you don't complain about things not working the way you want them to. Careful what you wish for.
So, other fixes are relatively low impact and achievement, localization issues, some in-collection descriptions. In Duels, there were some missing cards in Discover pools. And in Duels, there was also one version of Crimson Clergy was banned, another was not, so they fixed that. Yeah. So, as far as Hearthstone news, that's mostly it. Mostly it, hour and 40 minutes in. They released 2 new heroes, Jasnaros the Vibe Lord. He has a hat and a trumpet, so I bought that one. And then Ima Rakarana. She is Arana, but she's super cool.
I bought that one, and I do not regret my purchase. Even if it meant I had to play Demon Hunter, I am happy with my purchase. Her thanks is, she just says thanks for the memories, and I think that is.
Oh my goodness. I was not going to buy this, and then you do this to me. You do this to us. Man.
Yeah. I wasn't sure, and then I just heard more things about it and had to snap it up.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's $10 well earned, Blizzard. Yeah. Also, if you like Hearthstone adjacent podcasts, Blizzlet did a great bit on this. Do not listen to it around your kids, but it is very funny. All right. In addition, there is discussion, not confirmation discussion, from Celestalon of a potential change to dupe protection. As of right now, the way it works is that it's a card you haven't gotten any copy of first. That's the first loop. Then the second loop is card you haven't gotten the golden of. So it can give you a golden of a card you have in signature. The change they are discussing is golden or higher. So that if you get the signature hipster, for example, from the rewards track, you will not open a golden common hipster before you see every other golden common. Does that make sense? You follow me?
Yeah.
As of right now, the second loop of Goldens can give you cards you have in signature. They're talking about making it so you cannot open a card in Golden if you already have it in signature or diamond. Speaking of someone that owns a bunch of signatures and diamonds, I think that's better because I'd rather just play those. But some people really don't want the signatures, so they might play the Golden Commons instead.
So does it skip the normal? It skips the normal one right now if you have it in signature, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would just be bringing the Goldens. This is the second pass around once you have everything. Like, this is a very first world problem, right? But it's if you have everything already in one rarity or another, then it will skip the ones that you have in any sort of a non-normal version until you have all of those in something else, right? That's kind of what they're talking about.
Yes.
Which shouldn't happen, but there are whales, so
yeah. But that's the majority of the Hearthstone news we have this week. Oh yeah, there's a new Tavern Brawl, the first one in a while, 7 months. Aviana's Night. The first card you play each turn is free. Well, that's degen. So, let's wrap up by talking about tournaments. No explanation this week. We just did that all episode. So we're going to talk about tournaments because one of us was there.
It's the Grand Tournament!
So we had a Masters tour. We had Levick was our winner, who will be going to Worlds. He was playing Tony Druid, Miracle Rogue, Outcast, Demon Hunter, and 30-card Blood Death Knight. Was the only Blood Death Knight in the top 4, and was one of 2 players. Both of the finalists had Tony Druid, but that was an outlier because a lot of the field did not bring it. So that was kind of a storyline with Wolder, who was the runner-up, and Levick both having Druid, and a lot of the rest of the field leaving it out for fear of it getting targeted. Wolder, again, this was an all EU top 4, by the way. Wolder had Frost Death Knight, Tony Druid, Miracle Rogue, and Outcast Demon Hunter. Rounding out the top 4 were Pocket Train and Rekfam. Pocket Train had Frost Death Knight, Aggro Mage, Miracle Rogue, and Outcast Demon Hunter. And Rekfam had probably was the most representative lineup of the 4: Frost Death Knight, Shadow Priest, Miracle Rogue, and Relic Demon Hunter. There was a match in the round of 8 between Rekfam and Casey, who had practiced together. And the only thing, Edel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the only thing they disagreed with was like what was at the top end of the Miracle Rogue. Otherwise, it was like it was like card for card, the lineups were identical. And Casey had Krakatoa and Rekfam had Draka. And
Correct.
that ended up being game 5 of that series came down to a mirror of the Miracle Rogues, and the Draka, I believe, was the difference in that game, right? Did he play it? I think he did play it, Rekfam, right, in that game?
I forget if in their matchup in particular, but it was relevant at other points. Yes.
Yeah. So, but it was definitely a much more aggressive meta than expected. Not very many Blood Death Knights, Levick aside. An absence of Druid. Certainly nothing else greedier than Blood Death Knight to be found. Certainly no Control Priest or anything like that. Though Shadow Priest was fairly prevalent. There was a meme going on throughout the weekend of the level of shambles that Mage Doubters were in as Pocket Train advanced with the Aggro Mage. But it was a pretty fast paced tournament, all things considered, and it was a pretty fun tournament. Edel, obviously you had a front row seat, so what were your thoughts throughout the weekend as far as what we ended up seeing there?
So I was kind of surprised just how dramatically reduced the Blood DK was, since it was so popular like days before, right? And then the one that we do see here in the finals, and I think it's because of an excellent call of just, hey, people aren't going to be bringing Blood DK so much, then there's probably going to be a lot of aggro. And so to still bring it and then take out things like Mograine that don't do anything against the aggro decks and probably aren't good enough against, some of the slower things, like if you run into druids. It was just a really well thought out build. And the druid as well, watching Levick play druid just seemed masterful. This druid, it doesn't run the Mishmash Musher or Attorney at Maw stuff because the goal is to just consistently get the Anubricon Zoc play. And multiple times that would happen. There were massive stats, and then, ETC for either Starfish or I think
Crazed
Alchemist.
Alchemist. Yeah.
Yeah. We're both in there. And it seems like, I guess people get stuck in thinking that you need like Jailer and everything, but it was not by any means required, right? Like you just got Zoc down and killed people.
Yeah. I mean, that's been like the basis of like the Azamat Druid. That's been since then, right? Where it's just you don't need the Tony thing. If you could just like, get if you're against it, any aggro deck, you just get Zoc down and the game ends if they can't get through it, and then you have Crazed Alchemist in the ETC if they're not going to be stopped by that, but then you can just flip it and butt stomp them with one of the minions that comes off the Zoc. Then you just end the game that way. And you have I think Starfish was there for Frost DK.
Yeah.
To allow the minions to continue to attack through a Frostworm's Fury. So I think that was No Hands Gamer had popularized that build a couple days before the Masters Tour. But it was very late before the Masters Tour, so it was really heads up of Levick to pick up on that and bring that for the tournament.
Yeah, and there were actually 2 druids in the finals, Levick and then Wolder, who took second place. And I kind of mistakenly brought it up on broadcast because I was just trying to think of a way of transitioning into the finals. These players, Levick is Russia, Wolder is UK, but they are friends, which I thought was really nice that he mentioned in the interview. A lot of people don't support the war, right? So it's easy to just like look at stuff in the abstract, and but there are many Russians who do not support the war. And so it was really nice that Levick mentioned about that in the interview, I thought.
Yeah. It was a fun event. The casting was top notch. So even when you weren't on stream. So
Okay, good.
I'm glad you got to go back.
Yeah.
Me too.
Did you have fun?
I did have fun. I also had to not vomit from anxiety, but I did largely have fun. The difference between YouTube and Twitch is substantial.
Yeah. Oh, the chat is a lot. And
the chat, there were no moderators.
No,
which
there
is not
certainly
good.
weren't.
Like the stripped down esports budget is not just in terms of prizes and no qualifiers, so they don't have to pay staff for that. There were 0 moderators. Lorinda was incredible and filtered chat for me, so I didn't have to see things and just told me some of the good stuff. They're incredible. And Lorinda and Raven both kind of talked me down when I was worried, because I felt like the first match that I cast on day 2 just didn't feel good to me. I felt off, and they kind of talked me down from what I was feeling after that. It's a lot, and when you think about how many people that is to be live in front of, it can get a little overwhelming. But hopefully it's something that I will be able to get used to.
Yeah, I guess we should mention that it was fairly consistently through day one up at around 20,000 viewers, which is like in order of magnitude bigger than most of the esports events last year that were just on YouTube. Every time I checked in on YouTube, it was like consistently like 1,000 to 1,500 viewers, but Twitch was, peaking and staying fairly consistently at around 20,000 on day one, and I think it was still at like 16 to 18,000 when I was looking at it on day two, which is, those are numbers at the size of like Worlds from last year. So that's a really good sign in terms of just being able to be where the people are, because you can't explain that just from drops, because we had drops on YouTube also. So it means that there is an audience, and when you put the tournament in the place where the viewers are and want to be, then they will come watch the tournaments. And that is, especially because I think a lot of people were worried, particularly with the lack of promotion ahead of time and some of the, there were definitely some audio, some technical issues right as the event started on day one, and those things happen. But I think everyone was kind of worried that this was kind of like an existential test for Hearthstone esports. Like, are people going to come watch now that it's back on YouTube? And the answer is yes. Is it like the 100,000 plus of like the last BlizzCon Worlds? No, but 20,000 on the first day of the first tournament with relatively little fanfare is a really good sign.
Well, I think considering the fact, like the decline over the past few years, being sort of trapped on YouTube for a while, the lack of promotion, just so many factors, and then coming back to 20K was just so vindicating, right? That because there was concern of, it's not just YouTube, right? And then to come back and have like sort of everything wrong, but to still put up solid numbers, felt really, really good. And so I hope that we can continue to, hold or even grow that such that in upcoming years it will feel at the very least like a more worthwhile marketing thing to do, because clearly people are interested in watching it when it's actually on the platform where people expect to watch esports.
Yeah, and like Riot put out like a whole manifesto about like why they do esports and like where they're going to focus, and a lot of it was around like, we're not getting new players with this. Like, nobody's coming to like a league esports broadcast to like learn League. It's not the same as like just going to watch like a soccer game. But the people who are watching want to get better at the game and want to learn it. And so that's the audience that they're looking for. And those become maybe not new acquisitions, but those become the very engaged players. Yeah. So hopefully Blizzard will start to see that and will be able to focus on that. And it seems like there's a good foundation here. And there are definitely some easy things that they can do. And I think a lot of it was just down to doing this for the first time with a new crew who there were just a lot of things that they didn't realize they needed to do until after it was too late to do them. Like, I had tweeted about like, hey, imagine how many viewers you could get if you just put a link to the stream on the Blizzard launcher so that when people went to go play the game, they would see that. And I got a reply from Eric Elliott, who works for the esports team, like, oh, that's my bad, I forgot to hit publish on it, right? And that's like, that's the thing that'll happen when you haven't done an event like this in 3 months or 5 months rather. So and
and there were other things like working with new folks. People may have noticed that at the start of day one we had a 3-box situation where there was like 2 casters and a host, and we like did it for a while until it became clear that it was going to take up too much time to keep doing, and it just didn't fit for Hearthstone. Like, it makes more sense with something like Valorant, where different people have different roles. You've got like the shoutcasters for in-game and then the desk people afterwards. But Hearthstone, like, all the casters do all the things. So having this like in between matches, there's a third person that's host to go with the 2 casters. It just like doesn't really fit. So that's probably not going to happen at all. You know, it was dropped for day 2 and the second half of day 1. Yeah,
It also
growing
seems like
pains.
it seems like logistically, just like having one of the casters being on call to jump in at a moment's notice, like as soon as as soon as one player goes up, to 2 games, seems just kind of like, because you go and you get a snack, you go relax. I mean, I'm sure that they're still watching, but maybe not necessarily in front of the PC like the entire time, and like having to have somebody ready to go for a fairly long stretch of time just can't be. It feels like it's not a great quality of life, change for whoever that caster is who has to be on like host duty for that match.
It made more sense when everyone was in person and they were just
like a
going to
dream
sit
map.
in the green room, because that was when they had Cora do this, because she is a professionally trained communications host. And then she did hosting things and anchored the whole show and managed the flow, and was also physically there in the event hall because that's what she did back then. But
And would also do the interviews, right? The player interviews.
Yeah.
But it's an anachronism in the era of Zooming in or Discording in or whatever to spectate. Like, you don't have people just dedicated on call like that, and you're not flying them anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is worth mentioning, like the TFT tournaments, they do that still, like even when they're remote. So I don't know why, but that's still a thing that they do for some reason. Like that's like Necra is very often, at least when she's been doing TFT, like she's in that role, like hopping in as host. So I'm not sure why they made that decision to do that for TFT, but that was when Edel told me about this, I'm like, have they been watching too much TFT esports? Because that seems like a TFT thing that they would do that doesn't make sense for Hearthstone. But I'm glad that you all were able to lobby to just kind of like cut the pieces that weren't working and get it to a good, clean cast.
To this group's credit, I think, we humored it, we did it, and then they saw that it didn't work.
Yeah.
Right. So credit where credit is due. Like, while there were some issues with various things that didn't really make sense for Hearthstone, that were being figured out, the adaptability and the willingness to like take feedback and have no ego and just like switch to doing the better thing was really, really nice and refreshing.
Yeah. And things did improve from a viewing perspective between day 1 and day 2. Like day 1 was pretty rough. Like Raven's audio was cutting out at one point for like the majority of a match, and there were some of those technical issues before one of the games, and like a lot of those things got cleaned up over the day, and then by the time you got to day 2, everything was just like running on all cylinders, and it felt like being back.
Yeah. And I will note, to expectation manage a little bit, this event gave me a lot of hope that they will renew this exact program for another year.
Well,
Yeah.
That is the level of hope I am prepared to embrace. If the program does better this year, if the future tournaments this year have better numbers, if you were saying to yourself, well, certainly they will invest more. No. They will consider it a job well done that they got to increase interest while spending less, and they will keep doing this exact thing. They will reinvest when this stops working, and when also they suffer a loss from it not working. So, please, continue watching so they keep renewing this. It is nice to have events. I do feel like I wish there was a more robust ecosystem for esports. I wish there was more than this. But this feels like the DK Discover change of events, that the fewer events make them feel more special.
Yeah.
So, while I wish there was like an opportunity for more than 16 total people to compete, as a spectator, an event every so often, I will never be overwhelmed with too many events going on, not being sure of which is when. Oh my god, I can't believe that's weekend. No. These are capital E events now that we know when they're coming. They're announced in advance, and we make time to watch them if we want to watch them. That part at least makes them feel like they have a little bit more weight, and the quality of Hearthstone play over the weekend was very high. Like, these are really great players.
Yeah, like there's no question, like because of like how much time and effort and cost of sanity is needed to be put in to get qualified for this event. And I know Lorinda made that point repeatedly over the course of the weekend. I believe Sottle did too. Like, there is no question that these are some of the best players in the world, because they had to put in a hell of a lot of sweat equity just to qualify. It's not like I mean, you in the old system, not to say that there weren't a lot of great players, but you could spike a tournament and get in, right? And that would happen. That you're not spiking, rank 1 legend on multiple months. Like, that's not happening. That's happening with a lot of time and a lot of effort and probably a lot of therapy afterwards.
Something kind of tragic about this whole situation is that tournament prep took away from their grind for this month.
Oh no.
So the people who didn't win, they're having a tough time
Oh yeah. Poor
getting into
Pocket.
and staying into top 50.
Poor Pocket. I've just seen just like the titles of his streams and just like I haven't been able to make it back into his streams, but I already know what it's gonna be like, especially this late in the month. And the poor guy, because it was watching like Heart of Darkness every time I went into a stream at the end of last month.
The ladder grind system is not player friendly, and I really wish there was any kind of alternative, because the level of sanity investment that you have to make. That's very well said, Steve. Anyone that wants a clear demonstration of what sanity investment looks like, go to twitch.tv/Lorinda. You will see it on display. But the amount of effort that these folks have to put in, and the amount of time and marination in the meta, whether they like it or not, is crazy. Really ridiculous.
Yeah. And I mean, you go watch Pocket Trainer, you go watch McBanterface, or or Meaty, or Rekfam when he streams. I don't think Rekfam streams as consistently as everyone else, but he does stream quite a bit. And like, you just see, like, you can't hide what they're going through at that point. I mean, they're just streaming it.
And Pocket's number 4 on
it,
EU right now. Like, it's not like he's doing badly. He is rank 4, but also, like, Hearthstone's not a great job. It's a fun game. It's not a great job.
Is it fun when you're playing that many games at that high stakes for that long? I don't know if it's still fun.
I am definitely speaking in generalities. Like, for people that are not those 16 people, I think it is generally a fun game, and anyone that disagrees probably isn't listening to this because they stopped playing.
I agree.
But if you stop playing and you're still listening, like, I'm sorry you weren't having fun, but thanks for tuning in. But it's not. It seems like a very not great job right now.
I mean, I'm just thinking of like that Treehouse of Horror episode of The Simpsons where Homer goes to hell and they have him on the machine that's just shoving donuts into his mouth over and over again. Now, Homer's Homer, so it didn't bother him, but that's kind of what I think of. Like, this is a very fun game, but if you have a machine shoving donuts into your mouth constantly, eventually the donuts are not going to be as exciting as they were when you started.
I think if I had one wish for HS Esports, it would be for something like the old Dream Hacks we used to have.
Yeah.
Some kind of open, honestly, even if it didn't qualify for Worlds, like I would prefer that it could qualify for something greater. But even if it was just like every once in a while, there's a big open with a 25K prize pool, and people can go and compete because it's near enough to them, or they can fly there if they are able. Like, people love in-person events, and having some kind of opens would be just really, really refreshing and nice. And I feel like we just haven't had that in forever.
Yeah. And like, competing's kind of secondary at that point, just going to hang out with a bunch of people.
Totally.
And also get to play Hearthstone part of the time and then hang out the rest of the time. Like, yeah, like I was planning to go to a DreamHack in like 2020 at some point, and then that kind of didn't happen for various reasons, like the pandemic. But I'm hoping that somebody will want to do that again. I mean, it seems like Bemi, rest in peace, was trying to do that, and hopefully somebody's gonna be able to pick up that mantle to get some sort of a land back to a DreamHack. But we'll see.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. But I think we're going to start winding things down here in this episode. So we have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website, coincoursei.com. You can find our contact info, show notes, Patreon information. Monetarily support us over at patreon.com/coincausei. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coincausei.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coincausei.com. Big thanks to our... Nope, I jumped ahead. Join our community chats and our Discord. Did I say Discord already? I am having so much trouble keeping focus. I'm just going to do this whole thing again. I'm going to do the whole thing again. I'm marking it down. Don't worry, Edel, you'll see it. Your recording stopped, huh?
Why?
We need to get you an XLR interface. The show will pay for it. It's fine. Okay. I'm going to start this again. I'm actually paying attention now. We have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at coinconcede.com. You can find our contact info, show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats and our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. Write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede. Like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/coinconcede. Like some CC swag, heading over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. New shop. It's cool. Big thanks to our producers. We have so many. Number Theory, Doja K, Crash Cap, Beef Squatch, David P, Fatal Black, Wild Lou, Jeremy T, Bottle Caps, Grumpy Monk, Krebs Mart, The Burger Club, Kirk Reagan, Forgiven One, and Enraged Chicken. Coin Concedes. I have a lot. So I'll go last. Steve, you go first.
Well, I'm going to coin concede to Superior David, who I got to share some Mamala's Deli with on Sunday. In between listening to the in between listening to the Masters Tour. So he was in Boston for a wedding, so I got to have some pastrami, and his fiance had veggie pastrami, which I did not know was a thing, but apparently it is, and she said it was pretty good. Yeah, got to hang out with him and catch up with him, and he's doing well. Still figuring out what's next, but he is doing well, and I'm looking forward to whatever the next thing is that he does. But it was a good time. It was good to catch up with him again, and hopefully they will announce BlizzCon soon so that we can all get together, because that should be, hopefully, if they're on the same schedule in the next couple weeks. But we'll see. Yeah, knock on wood.
Adel?
I would like to coin concede to all of my co-casters. I think especially Raven and Lorinda, but all of them just incredibly welcoming, supportive from start to finish of this whole process, in terms of, when I found out and leading up to negotiations. Like, it's been really, really great, talking me down when I got really anxious. And then also to Alkali and Deck Tech for behind the scenes reasons. They're not esports people, but they were very helpful behind the scenes. So, coin concede to both of them.
And as for me, I'm going to coin concede to a bunch of people. First of all, Dave. He's in our Discord. Dave is a cool dude. I asked him for help with a project. A buddy of mine is he's a gamer, but also wheelchair-bound, has some disabilities to work with, and found this really cool design for a joystick that goes over the wheelchair joystick and controls the computer. And it seemed really cool. It's like 3D print and whatever. So I'm like, hey, Dave, you're an engineer. You're a cool guy. How possible is this? Could you answer some questions? Dave jumped into a group chat with my buddy, spent like a bunch of time troubleshooting this and sourcing the parts and building it and programming it and putting it together, and was just an unbelievably helpful, wonderful human being. And it was just really, really nice to see, and reminded me of just yet another example of the Hearthstone community being the best community out there. And my buddy's like, this literally changed my life. And then he went and bought Hades and played Hades with the new controller. So Dave, thank you very much. You're the best. Dr. 3, I forgot this last week because I was distracted from reasons. But Dr. 3 had their 200th episode. So congratulations, Dr. 3. Yeah, they've been around for a while. They've gone through some host changes too. Really, really cool. So congrats, Dr. 3. I believe Major Death was on. So it was nice to hear from him again. So yeah, Dr. 3, congrats. Garrett and Daniel, thank you both for they both sent me alcohol as congratulations. So thank you, Garrett. Thank you, Daniel. Blister Guy, Blizzlet, and all the other shows. That it has been the actual strangest week of being a news story. I think the most out of body experience I had, our buddy Number Theory, producer for the show, longtime friend of the show, and myself, sent me a picture of his Google News feed, and I was the top item in his Google News feed that I got a job with Blizzard. It is very strange being someone else's news story. Really, really, really weird. But like, obviously, it's hype as hell. I'm excited for it, but feelings that I had not really worked through. So Blister Guy and Blizzlet, they talked about it in episodes, and were just generally really kind people. Brought up a lot of memories, and it's been a humbling week. So thank you so much, everyone. I was on vacation this past week, and it was a family vacation with my wife, her mother, her sister, brother-in-law, and their 1-year-old, and also my parents. And we were in Dominican Republic. All-inclusive resort was nice. Like, I try and do that every so often when I can swing it, and this timing was good. And my mother's like, I don't respond to anything, but I do follow you on Twitter just to see what's up. And she saw the post, and she was like, the comments, everyone that said something on Twitter that replied that was positive about me getting the job, you made my mom happy, so thank you. Because my Jewish mother is not often taken aback with positivity. That does not happen very much with Jewish mothers. And so you all made my mother very happy for me, and I really appreciate that, and so does she. So thank you, everyone, for being the nicest. And also, Coin Concede to Deck Tech for doing our intro.
One time. Just this one time, because you're
I sent you the bumper. You can use that whenever you want. But
nope, one time.
I guess it won't be accurate anymore when one of you is anchoring.
Correct.
So
That is true. It's already like out of date, like in a week. So
it's a time capsule.
yeah.
Anyways, so that is our show. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I have one more, and we'll see you all next week. We will see you all next week. So keep calm and give the meta a minute and play something fun. And Edelweiss's deck codes are in the show notes. And if you see us on ladder, Coin Concede.
Coin Concede.
Coin Concede.
I'm playing it. You can't stop me.
All life must end. I yield for now. I concede. Well fought. I concede.
You win this one.
The victory is yours.
You have bested me.
I give up.
You win this one, friend. You win this time. I choose death.
So I'm gonna ask something stupid. Is Demon Hunter in there?
Yes. Let's see. Hold on.
Oh no.
I mean, I have the base file. Hold on. Let me look. It should be the second bumper. Second. Yeah. DK is here.
All life must end.
Wait 2.8 seconds.
I yield.
Okay.
For
Okay,
now.
he's there. Okay.
Yeah, he's in there.
All right.
It's-
I was
so-
having a senior moment.
So what I wanted to do, so before I had lined up all the bumpers, like just spaced them out, but it was getting pretty crowded because they keep adding classes and the bumper doesn't get any longer. So what I did, I charted out in the original bumper where the first sound file starts, the first concede starts and the last one ends. Charted out the total duration, took all the bumpers I have now, total duration of there, subtracted, divided by 10, and exactly
math.
spaced them out every 2.8 seconds. There is an exact 2.8 second gap between every single concede, so they are evenly spaced. Even though some are longer, some are not. Whatever. You can never get class balance perfect. That's what we're trying to say in the game. It wasn't perfect in Classic, and it isn't perfect now. But at least they are equally spaced.
Thank you. That is probably much better than if I had ended up doing it.
So
It's
hopefully they don't introduce Monk in like the next 6 months, and we have to do this all over again.
Well, you just got to do the
2
math.
years, right?
I
You
don't
just
wanna
got to do the math.
I do
You-
math for 40 hours a week. I don't want to do math when I'm doing this.
You have 28 seconds of wiggle room. Okay, so you can do whatever, as long as the concede is not more than 28 seconds, and it shouldn't be. That'd be protracted.
That would be trollish, is what that would be.
It
Oh,
was
man.
stupid how I had to do it. I had to generate a 2.8 second bleep and copy it between all of them, and then just space using a sound file because there's no like evenly space option. So I just made an exact length sound.
I have to edit this like tonight because I have to leave in the morning early.
Where you? Okay. Well, I will send this to you now. Then you got the bumpers,
Oh,
right? I
yeah.
put them in Discord.
Yep.
Okay. All right, everyone. Then I'm gonna pull the stream down so Edelweiss can get started, and can resist queuing up another prisoner mage game.
Which you could do them both at the same time, probably.
No.
I probably could actually. The turns are long enough.
But that's a good way to stay up late and then curse the show. So do what you have to do before you get to do what you want to do. Anyways, stream. Bye. See you next Thursday.
Bye.